Chapter 90. Noah raised his head and looked at the building in front of him that was at least 20 meters tall. He squinted his eyes because of the light reflected from the reflective glass. Is this the location of that famous large-scale weapons company, the headquarters of SEMA Heavy Industries? That's right. In addition to Noah, another man who was still in high school at the scene made a speechless response. If possible, I really want to never set foot here like Miss Mugging. If it weren't for your request, Noah, I think Miss Mugging would never let me bring you here, right? After conducting a small test for Rentaro and Yen Zhu in the stadium, Noah asked Rentaro to bring him here as soon as he left the stadium. SEMA Heavy Industries was a well-known weapons company even in other regions. It was even more famous in the Tokyo area. Many police officers were very positive about the alloy weapons produced by this weapon company. After Noah heard that Rentaro's pistol was sponsored by the daughter of the president of SEMA Heavy Industries, he asked Rentaro to bring him here. As for Mugging, when he heard that Noya and Ryotaro were thinking about this place, he had the most unlucky expression on his face. It was as if he had heard some filthy word. Then, he strongly expressed that he absolutely did not want to come here. Even Yen Zhu was forced to stay by Mugging. Although he didn't know why Mugino was so disgusted with SEMA Heavy Industries, it was just as Rentaro said. If it wasn't for Noah's request to come here, Mugino might have forced Rentaro to stay. Looking at the evasive expression on Rentaro's face, Noah asked in confusion. What? Is the daughter of the president of SEMA Heavy Industries difficult to deal with? Not difficult to deal with, but extremely difficult to deal with. Rentaro sighed. Forget it, let's go in and finish this so we can go back early. Noah shrugged and did not object. Under Rentaro's lead, they entered the building across the street. The security guard seemed to have received the news a long time ago. Not long after Noah and Ryotaro entered the building, they appeared on their own and led Noah and Ryotaro into the elevator. However, the elevator didn't go up. Instead, it moved in the direction of the underground. It didn't stop until it reached the 5th floor. Ding! As the sound of the elevator arriving at the destination floor rang out, the elevator door slowly opened. The security guard didn't seem to have any intention of getting out of the elevator. After gesturing to Noah and Ryotaro, he let them out of the elevator. In front of Noah and Rentaro was a vast space. In this place, in addition to the sci-fi-looking corridors that led in all directions, there were also exhibition counters placed around. On the counters, there were all kinds of weapons. There were sniper rifles, pistols, rifles, and other modern weapons. There were also knives, swords, spears, halberds, daggers, and other weapons used for close combat. The only thing that these weapons had in common was the pitch-black luster that symbolized the alloy. It told others that these weapons were manufactured to deal with human enemies. Welcome to SEMA Heavy Industries. After taking a closer look, Noah and Rentaro discovered that in the middle of this vast space stood a girl with a confident smile on her face. It was a young lady with long, wavy, jet-black hair tied into 2 ponytails behind her head. She was wearing a bright-colored kimono as if she was admiring flowers. She looked like a perfect young lady from a wealthy family. At this moment, a girl in a kimono with a strong Japanese style was looking at Noah with interest. Her pretty face with a beauty mole showed a smile as if she was aiming at a prey. This must be the president of Fairy Tale, President Noah, right? Noah was also looking at the girl in front of him. After a while, he nodded his head. I have long heard of your great name, SEMA Heavy Industries President's daughter Miss SEMA Maji. Just call me Maji. Maji took out a fan from her kimono and covered the lower half of her face. Her voice reverberated in the air, making it easy for people to perceive the joy contained within. Speaking of great names, we are the same. I often hear little Riken complaining that there is no business coming to him. More than once, he rejoiced that there is a spendthrift who will provide him with a commission as long as he asks. Oh. Noah glanced at Rentaro with a smile that was not a smile. So you have always thought of me like this? Don't take it seriously. This is definitely not true. Rentaro panicked and glared at Maji. Maji, why are you framing me? Who told little Riken to violate the agreement between us? Maji said as if it was a matter of course. Undoubtedly, we agreed that I will provide you with weapons for free. Little Riken came to class at Gaudian High School, but you skipped class today, didn't you? What can I do? Rintaro had an unspeakable expression. It's not like you don't know our company's financial situation. So today, even Miss Mugging skipped class and went to Fairy Tale to ask for help. Seeing that Rintaro and Maji seemed to intend to continue to pester each other, Noah shook his head and interrupted them. Back to the topic, Miss Maji, the purpose of my visit this time, Rintaro should have told you through the phone, right? Indeed, I have received it. Maji patted the fan in her hand and spread her hands with a smile. Her face was full of pride as if she was performing. Everything here is our Seema family's proudest work. I believe that President Noah will definitely be satisfied with them. This time, visiting Seema Heavy Industries and meeting Seema Maji, Noah only had one purpose. Equip himself with a gun. Noah wanted to equip himself with a gun. Of course, this wasn't because Rintaro suggested that Noah should equip himself with a gun to make up for his long-range combat methods. Although Noah's close-range combat was extremely strong compared to the people of this world, and even more so after a year of strengthening from the protozoan virus. Not to mention, Noah's magic knight's sword could also control the distance at will. Distance was no obstacle to him, but that didn't mean that Noah didn't have any long-range combat methods. After all, Noah was still a magic shooter. The super high-level destruction magic, Crush, didn't only work on things that Noah personally touched, it could also be used from a distance. However, in this world, as an ordinary person who wasn't a cursed child, Noah couldn't brazenly use magic in order to avoid unnecessary commotion. Therefore, equip himself with a gun was a good way for Noah to conceal himself. Besides, in this world, there was almost no situation where Noah could seriously fight. Therefore, with a gun, he could deal with a lot of situations where he didn't need to personally fight. Because of this, Noah directly shifted his line of sight to the display of guns on the counter. President Noah wants to equip himself with a gun, right? Maji, who clearly saw this point, smiled sweetly. Our company's guns are also very famous in the industry. Although the guns don't need to be made with rhenium alloy, if the rhenium bullets are shot with a good performance gun, the power can be improved a lot. The XD series pistols of Shao Rigian are also provided by our company. Speaking until here, Maji also led Noah and Rintaro to one of the display counters. She pointed at the guns placed inside and introduced them. Of course, if ordinary guns can't satisfy President Noah's needs, there are also guns here that have been specially modified by our company. In terms of performance, they can't be compared to the state before modification. Noah naturally heard all of Maji's words. Noah, who glanced at the counter in front of him, quickly fixed his eyes on one of the guns. Chapter 91. It has been a year since he came to this world. Noah has gained a lot of understanding of this world. Among them, it naturally included the understanding of modern weapons like guns. It could be said that Noah's understanding of guns was only at the level of long-range shooting weapons. He knew almost nothing about the types of guns, their advantages, their characteristics, and their manufacturing. Therefore, Noah didn't know whether the gun he was looking at was good or bad. However, just like how some people would feel extremely comfortable with the most suitable tool for themselves, Noah took a fancy to the gun in front of him at first glance. Muri and Rintaro seemed to have noticed Noah's line of sight. They looked over and were both startled. This is... Rintaro tilted his head and asked Muri with some uncertainty. This is a revolver, right? The gun Noah was looking at was a revolver. It wasn't one of those short, cylindrical revolvers that were commonly used by the police. Instead, the revolver's body was almost the same as Rentaro's XD series automatic pistol. It was 8 inches long, and its outer body was also elongated. It was a completely black revolver that had obviously been modified. As a revolver, the appearance of the revolver in front of him was obviously domineering and elegant at the same time. It made people unable to move their eyes away from it at first glance. However, the body of the revolver was indeed a lot longer than the average revolver. It was even longer than the body of an automatic pistol if the magazine of the revolver was included. For more practical people, the feeling of the gun in front of them would probably be that it was a special case to emphasize the beauty of the gun. It would make people wonder whether or not it had good performance. It just so happened that Rentaro was this kind of person. Is this a modified version of the Colt Python revolver? Rentaro couldn't help but interrupt. Most revolvers have a relatively small capacity and a relatively low bullet speed. Moreover, the way to load the ammunition must be manually. The reloading time is too long and the power is relatively low. Although the Colt Python revolver has been improved in power, it still can't do without these shortcomings. How is the performance of this modified gun? If even Xiao Lijian knows about it, then it's impossible that our SEMA company doesn't know about it. Mo took out the 8-inch long revolver in front of her, and the gun body immediately flashed with an arc of light. This gun's modification rate is at least 80%. Our department's professionals specifically modified the revolver's unique shortcomings, and thus modified this gun. This gun's bullet speed and power have been greatly improved. Mo said proudly. I can guarantee you that the bullets fired from this gun are as powerful as an anti-tank sniper rifle. Comparable in power to an anti-tank sniper rifle? Rentaro looked at the gorgeous revolver in Muri's hand in surprise. Won't this gun explode? In order to prevent this, we specially modified it. Mo smiled, but this time, her smile was slightly restrained. Unfortunately, as you can see, even if the bullet speed and power are comparable to an anti-tank sniper rifle, in order to increase its bullet speed and power, the weight of this gun is much heavier than an ordinary revolver. Moreover, the bullet capacity and the number of times it can be loaded is limited to 6, the same as an ordinary revolver. In other words, the bullet speed and power have been greatly improved, but its weight has been increased. In addition, the bullet capacity is also limited to 6, not exceeding the limit of an ordinary revolver. Rentaro muttered, then as if he thought of something, he said to Mo. No, the bullet speed and power are comparable to an anti-tank sniper rifle. Even if the gun body is strengthened and won't explode or overheat, the recoil is definitely not small, right? Just like what Xiao Lijian said. Mo spread her hands. If you want to use this gun, even if you don't care about the fact that it only has 6 bullets, you still need a lot of arm strength. Otherwise, you won't be able to use it at all. So, originally, this gun was specially made for the initiator. Indeed, there won't be any problems if the initiator uses this gun. Ryutaru was slightly relieved as he turned his gaze to Noah, who had been silent all this while. However, Noah, you shouldn't choose this gun, it's better to use the XD series automatic pistol like me. Hearing this, Noah looked at the revolver in Muri's hand. After pondering for a while, he said. No. I want this one. Noah? Rentaro was stunned. Are you sure? On the contrary, Muri seemed to have expected Noah to say this. Her eyes flashed with interest. President Noah doesn't care about the fact that it only has 6 bullets, but if you don't have extraordinary arm strength, using this gun isn't a wise choice. Noah smiled indifferently, reached out his hand, took the gun from Muri's hand, and raised it. Then, let me try it a little bit. How about it? Motion Realism Prism Battle Simulation version 10.0. Start. After the pleasant synthetic voice read out the contents smoothly, Noah realized that he was standing in a huge room that was green all over. The inside of the room was extremely empty, and the light from the high ceiling was so dazzling that it made people unable to open their eyes. In addition, at a certain height, there were several glass windows. Only had time to observe these, Noah heard Muri's mechanical voice from all directions. President Noah, how do you feel? How do you feel? Noah looked around. It's quite strange. Fortunately, I experienced it once. At this time, Noah was in the 5th floor of the SEMA Heavy Industries headquarters, in an open cubic space called the VR Special Training Room, with a diameter of more than 1 kilometer. This was a world-famous virtual combat training facility with high performance. The entire room was made of special rubber. Not only could it use live ammunition, but it could also use various kinds of explosives. In the Yodo area, this was a very famous training facility. The self-defense forces, special police, and even rich busybodies wanted to use this training facility at least once. Therefore, it was said that the appointments from the outside were already arranged on a yearly basis. If you made an appointment now, you would have to wait at least a year before you could use it. However, under Wei Weaver's care, Noah made an exception and got a chance to use this place. While Noah was feeling, the surrounding scenery began to distort violently. The next moment, Noah appeared in a desert. At the same time, a gun appeared in Noah's hand out of thin air. It was the modified revolver Noah wanted to test. The information of the gun has been completely inputted. President Noah is holding the same gun as the previous one, including the weight. Muri's voice constantly sounded from all directions. President Noah, if there are no problems, we can start at any time. Noah gripped the butt of the gun tightly as if he was holding his own sword. He lowered his arm naturally. Let's start. As soon as the voice fell, Noah's eyes showed an image reminiscent of an old movie countdown. On one side, there was a black circle, and on the other side, there was a flickering countdown. Not long after, the synthetic voice said, "Mission start." Noah didn't know that in another room, Muri and Rentaro were having such a conversation. No way. Rentaro looked at the scene on the monitor and was shocked. Isn't this the famous battlefield where even the 10 elites of the Police Special Assault Force were judged to be dead and lost in the end when they challenged the Police Special Assault Force in a group battle? Hearing Rentaro's words, Muri's face showed a sinister smile. Chapter 92. Noah's map was a battlefield where he had to face 30 fully armed soldiers. Each soldier was equipped with an extremely advanced rifle. The battlefield was a desert that was difficult to attack and difficult to move. The soldiers would use sand dunes and defensive barriers to defend, but they wouldn't take the initiative to attack. All kinds of unfavorable conditions were impossible for an individual to break through. Even the 10 elites of the Police Special Assault Force were judged to be dead in the end and were defeated. It was easy to imagine how difficult it was to conquer this battlefield. It must be known that the elites of the Police Special Assault Force, even if they couldn't compare to the more powerful police, they weren't something that ordinary police could compare to. There were 10 such characters, and they were challenging in the form of a group battle. Even the police with the initiator wouldn't dare to casually challenge them. Moreover, if one chose this battlefield, they would suffer from the concentrated fire of all assault rifles from all directions. So, until now, no one has been able to clear this battlefield. Hey, Muri, Noah just wanted to test the performance of the gun. You threw him into this battlefield, isn't it too much? Rentaro suspiciously looked at Muri. If you let Noah be easily defeated, your product may disappoint the customers and make them give up on buying it. Is that okay? I'll see you in the small room. You don't understand, do you? Muri stared at the screen in front of her and leisurely waved the fan in her hand. Just like when I first met you, my intuition told me that the man in front of me may not be simple. Hearing this sentence, Rentaro suddenly stopped talking. Hee. Muri suddenly smiled meaningfully. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to what kind of surprise the president of Fairy Tale can bring me. Moreover, it's a gun specially modified by our company. However, just as this sentence came out of Muri's mouth, the scene on the screen in front of her made her face stiffen. Not only Muri, but even Rentaro also widened his eyes. Because, on the screen, Noah didn't even take a shooting posture. He kept holding the gun, pointing the muzzle at the ground, and closed his eyes. Yes. Noah closed his eyes. Stupid. Is he an idiot? Even Muri and Rentaro couldn't help but call out like this. This was a battlefield where they would suffer from the concentrated fire of rifles from all directions. Closing his eyes? Isn't this courting death? However, the next scene that appeared in front of the two people in front of the screen caused their mouths to slowly open at the same time. Bang 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 bang. Almost at the same time when Noah closed his eyes, chaotic gunshots from all directions randomly sounded. Shio 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 shio. The sound of dense bullets piercing the air echoed in the surroundings, mixed with the chaotic gunshot sounds of the battlefield. Noah raised his head and moved his hand that was holding the gun. Dang 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 dang. Noah's hand that was holding the spear seemed to have turned into a dancing afterimage in an instant. The rest of his body remained motionless, but his hand that was holding the spear began to dance wildly. While leaving behind afterimages, intense sparks and violent clashing sounds were heard in the trajectory of the afterimages that were waving past. It was the sound and phenomenon caused by Noah blocking the rifle bullets that were fired from all directions with the body of the gun in his hand. What? Muri and Rentaro's pupils suddenly shrank to the size of a needle tip. Using a gun body with a blocking area of less than 50 square centimeters to block hundreds of rifle bullets coming from all directions at the same time? Still closing his eyes? Is this something that a human can do? Bang 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 bang. Dang 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 dang. Unaware of Muri and Rentaro's shock at this time, Noah blindly waved his hand holding the gun, blocking all the incoming bullets without missing a single one. After a minute of concentrated fire, it began to stop. Until then, Noah's hand holding the gun tightened. Without warning, he aimed the gun in his hand in one direction and pulled the trigger. Bang! The bullet that was comparable to an anti-tank sniper rifle's shot, the power that could penetrate an armored vehicle quickly cut through the air, hitting the head of a soldier who had just emerged from the sand dune. Bang! The powerful bullet directly shot the soldier's head, making the soldier's body slowly fall down. Bang 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 bang. In this regard, Noah didn't even look at them. His eyes were still closed tightly as he spun his body. When the muzzle of the gun reached 5 directions along with the rotation of his body, the remaining 5 bullets in the gun in his hand were all fired. Bang 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 bang. As if to coordinate with Noah's shooting, the 5 soldiers in the 5 directions all poked their heads out. Just as they were about to launch a new round of shooting, their heads were suddenly blown apart by the bullets that came out of nowhere. Pa! When the bullets in the revolver in his hand were all used up, Noah fiercely patted his waist. The prepared bullets flew out from Noah's waist magazine. The 6 bullets were immediately thrown high into the sky, then fell down again. At this moment, Noah also swung his hand that was holding the revolver. The revolving magazine of the modified revolver in his hands suddenly popped out. The empty shells of 6 bullets suddenly shook out and fell to the ground. Immediately, Noah raised the gun in his hand high, and the 6 bullets that were thrown down fell into the 6 grooves in the revolver's magazine very accurately as if they had been calculated. The next moment, Noah swung his hand again, the loaded magazine ejected back into the gun. At this time, the bullets were loaded. If the entire process was calculated using a timer that was accurate to the decimal point, it would only take 0.7 seconds. Looking at Noah, who closed his eyes and continued to shoot, accurately hitting each soldier's head, exploding the simulated soldier's head, and accurately blocking the shots from all directions, Muri and Rentaro almost doubted their own eyes. So strong. Rentaro couldn't find any other adjectives to describe his mood at this time. What is this? What is this? Muri was like a warmonger who saw an exciting battle and was so excited that she couldn't tell north from south. Is there a man like this in this world? Although the modified revolver provided by MO has enough bullet speed and power to match the anti-tank sniper rifle that can penetrate armored vehicles, it has the shortcomings of too small a bullet capacity, too much weight, and too large a recoil. Therefore, the person who used this gun must have extraordinary arm strength. Seeing that Noah could shoot continuously in a short period of time, and his hand didn't even tremble, Muri and Rentaro knew that Noah's arm strength passed. Looking at Noah's godlike skill in reloading bullets, which only took 0.7 seconds, the shortcoming of having a small capacity was made up for. In this way, the gun was simply tailor-made for Noah. So suitable. Bang! As the last bullet was fired, the last soldier fell in the desert. When she came back to her senses, Noah had already returned to his original room. So strong. 21,000%. Mori's excited scream rang out, causing Noah to press down on his ears. What 21,000%? That's the average of Kuriki's combat power from the previous 3 times he used this simulation facility. After setting it to 100%, the current combat power is calculated. In other words, you're 210 times stronger than Kuriki, 210 times stronger than Rentaro in his normal state. Noah clenched the gun in his hand and nodded with satisfaction. Mori-san, I want this. Chapter 93. Is there really no problem? Walking on the busy street, Noah touched the gun and the magazine full of ammunition that were hidden under his coat at the back of his waist. He could not help but let out a sound. No matter if it's a specially modified gun or a manufactured ammunition, the cost is not cheap, right? Is it really okay to provide it for free? Since they said it's free, why don't you accept it generously? Ryutaru, who was walking beside Noah, had an indifferent look on his face. Even a person like me is willing to be a sponsor. You're a person who showed 210 times more fighting power than me, and you only used shooting and closed your eyes. You didn't show any close combat ability that even Yenju was no match for. Otherwise, you would be at least 500 times more powerful than me. If that shrewd president's daughter let go of a living signboard like you, then she wouldn't be Shimamuri. It seemed like the police were the only ones benefiting from the weapons company as the sponsor, but of course, that was impossible. As a sponsor, the weapons company could use the slogan, "A strong police team is using the weapons provided by us," to gain publicity and improve their business. Therefore, it was impossible for the weapons company to provide equipment to just anyone. If you want the weapons company to become a sponsor, you have to go through a strict review. A year ago, the Tiantong Civilian Guard Company was still in its infancy stage and did not have any actual achievements. Originally, they were mentally prepared to be rejected during the review stage, so they applied to Tsima Heavy Industries, but the result was unexpectedly approved. As for the reason, Noah didn't know, but he could only smile bitterly at Ryutaru's words. If Noah showed his close combat ability, he would definitely be stronger. This was not wrong. But what Ryutaru didn't know was that Noah made a big mistake in shooting. Ryutaru thought that it was incredible that Noah could shoot with 100% accuracy with his eyes closed, but only Noah knew that it wasn't incredible at all. On the contrary, if he didn't do that, Noah might not even be able to hit a target. That's not surprising. It had been a year since he came to this world. It was not the first time that Noah had seen a gun. But before today, Noah had never even touched a gun. How could he hit every shot? Therefore, in order to not miss the target, Noah could only close his eyes and use his sensing ability wholeheartedly. Using his outstanding sensing ability, he took in the surroundings, the opponent's position, movements, and intentions in all directions. Everything was included in the scope of his detection, and he shot like a radar. Therefore, Noah was able to achieve a 100% hit rate. In other words, Noah's shooting ability was so outstanding only because of his outstanding perception ability. If he were to rely on his own ability to shoot, he might not even be able to hit a single target. In the simulation battle, in the end, only Noah's godlike ability to reload and block the incoming attacks was what Mo and Ryutaru saw. He was the real deal. As for his shooting ability, without his perception ability, it might be a bit too much to say that Noah was trash. But compared to those who had been specially trained in shooting, Noah was indeed a bit worse, let alone hitting every single target. Ryutaru, who didn't know any of this, was very emotional. Mo treated Noah like a treasure and repeatedly said that she would give him weapons and ammo for free. If he needed other weapons in the future, she would also provide them for free. Just like Ryutaru said, she treated Noah like a living signboard. Just as Noah was thinking about this, Ryutaru suddenly said, "Actually, I've always wanted to ask you, why did you approve of me as Yenju's promoter?" Ryutaru's listless expression slowly became serious. He looked forward and said, "Undoubtedly, you are very strong, and you personally taught Yenju combat skills. As an initiator, Yenju's ability is much stronger than the average initiator. Even you said that she can squeeze into the top 300 IP rankings. With such a strong initiator, why didn't you partner with Yenju yourself? You don't have an initiator either, right? Noah's footsteps imperceptibly paused for a moment, but after a moment, he recovered as if nothing had happened. After a moment of silence, he opened his mouth. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. When I first saw you, not only did I not want Yenju to be your initiator, I also wanted to kick you out of Fairy Tale. Kick. Ryutaru was stunned. Obviously, Ryutaru had thought of many answers, but he didn't expect Noah's answer to be like this. Ryutaru. Noah said indifferently. You are from the plundered generation, right? Ryutaru's body trembled, and his eyes began to fluctuate. I still remember, a year ago, when I received your application to become an initiator in Fairy Tale and met you, your reaction. Noah was still looking forward as he spoke. At that time, when you mentioned the initiator, there was not the slightest bit of emotion in your eyes. When you looked at the appearance of the cursed child in Fairy Tale, it was as if you were looking at an animal that only knew how to walk. If I'm not wrong, at that time, you were the same as everyone else. You hated and excluded the cursed child, right? Ryutaru didn't refute, and tacitly agreed. I'm sure you know very well why I established Fairy Tale. I want those children to live a normal life. Noah's tone was surprisingly firm. Even for those children who were determined to fight and become initiators, I also hoped that they would be able to obtain a partner who cherished them. If they couldn't do that, I would have rejected them without hesitation. Then why did you still choose me at that time? Ryutaru finally couldn't help but ask. At that time, I didn't have the qualifications to be acknowledged by you, did I? Hearing Ryutaru's words, Noah closed his eyes and smiled. Do you know what kind of feelings Yenju had for other people in the past, other than me and my fellow Fairy Tale companions who took her in? What kind of feelings did she have for others? Ryutaru's footsteps stopped. Do you still remember Yenju, who hates everyone except me and my fellow cursed children? Do you still remember the change in you when you saw her? Noah also stopped in his tracks, and his tone was a little distant. When you saw Yenju's eyes filled with hatred, Ryutaru, your emotionless gaze changed, and it became filled with shock. This was a change that the other plundered generations would never have. So, I decided to give you all a chance. I'll give Yenju, who had always hated others, a chance to come into contact with outsiders and change her hatred for outsiders. I'll also give you a chance to get to know these children again, and truly free you from the plundered generations and become a normal person. Noah raised his head and looked at Ryutaru, and the corner of his mouth curved upwards. As it turns out, my eyesight wasn't bad. You all successfully bid farewell to the hatred in your hearts. Phew. Ryutaru let out a heavy sigh and bitterly laughed. It seems that I still have to thank you. You're welcome, Noah said jokingly. Ding-ling-ling. Suddenly, Noah and Ryutaru's phones rang at the same time, causing their gazes to change at the same time. Chapter 94. In the cold corridor, Noah and Rintaro seemed to be walking leisurely, but in reality, their footsteps were somewhat hurried. Their footsteps could be clearly heard as they hurried forward. President Noah. See you inside. In front of them, next to a door, Mugging, who was wearing a black sailor suit, seemed to be waiting for the two's arrival. When she saw Noah and Rintaro appear, a relieved expression appeared on her face. Mugen-san. Rintaro hurriedly stepped forward. What's going on? Why did you suddenly ask me to come to the Ministry of Defense? This happens to be something I want to know. I just received news that there's a commission. Mugging reached out her hand and gestured for Rintaro to not be anxious. Then, she cast her gaze on Noah. Now, it seems that it's not just the Tendo Civilian Police Company that received the news. Even Fairy Tale received the news? Noah didn't answer and only nodded. After sizing up Mugging's surroundings, he asked, what about you? Where's Yenju? She's in Fairy Tale. I told her to continue with her classes. Mugging sighed. After all, since I was asked to come to the Ministry of Defense, the topic I'm going to talk about will definitely make Yen Zhu sleepy, right? Noah smiled bitterly, but he didn't say anything. He walked past Mugang and came to the side of the door and pushed it open. What appeared in front of Noah, Mugang, and Rentaro was a conference room with a slender oval table in the center. A huge EL screen was embedded in the innermost wall. The moment Noah opened the door, a suffocating atmosphere appeared in the conference room. Mugang and Rentaro's shoulders stiffened. Even Noah frowned. The culprit behind this suffocating atmosphere was the many people in the conference room. There were people in well-made suits sitting at the conference table in the center of the room. One could tell at a glance that they were high-ranking people, but they didn't look like they had suffered a lot. There was a sign on the table in front of them, indicating the identities of the representatives of these police companies. Around these people, there was a group of people who were obviously dressed differently from the presidents of the police companies. Not only were they not uniform, but they were also dressed in all kinds of strange things. They were all holding black metal weapons in their hands, and they were all leaning against the wall. They more or less gave off a murderous aura. There was no doubt that they were the police officers under the presidents of the police companies sitting at the conference table. They were also promoters like Rentaro. It could be seen that there were little girls around Yen Zhu's age, about 10 years old, standing beside each of the police officers. It was clear that these young girls were the initiators of the police. What's going on? Ryotaro subconsciously lowered his voice. Why are there so many police officers? Why did the president of the company bring the internal police officers with him? Moreover, almost all of them are famous police companies in Tokyo. Mugang looked a little nervous. It seems that something big is going to happen. In this regard, Noah didn't comment much, but he directly opened the door and walked in. With Noah taking the lead, Mugang and Rentaro seemed to have mustered up a lot of courage and followed Noah into the conference room. Just as the three of them stepped into the conference room, from all directions, a murderous gaze pierced the three of them like arrows. Hey, is this a joke? Without giving Noah, Mugang, and Rentaro a chance to react, among the group of police officers leaning against the wall, a promoter deliberately shouted and walked out. It was a burly man wearing a vest. He had a face scarf with a skull pattern on his mouth, and he carried a large sword that weighed at least 10 kilograms on his back. He gave off the aura of a delinquent and a troublemaker. What's wrong with the police recently? You've even started to treat this as a game? The ruffian-like man looked down at Noah and the other two with his burly figure. There's no place for little brats to stay here, hurry up and get out of here. Mugang and Rentaro, who didn't expect trouble to come as soon as they arrived, froze for a moment and forgot to react. Only Noah didn't seem to be surprised. He didn't even look at the thuggish man. He walked past him and walked towards the conference table. Whoosh! Careful! A sharp sound pierced through the air, and Mugang and Rentaro's screams sounded at the same time Noah walked past the thuggish man. Immediately after, the thuggish man's angry roar sounded. I'm talking to you, didn't you hear me? Little brat. With such an angry roar, under the watchful eyes of the surrounding people, the ruffian's fist mercilessly landed on Noah's back with a strong gust of wind. Noah was caught off guard by the attack. Bang! However, in the next second, the person who flew out with a muffled sound wasn't Noah, but the burly thuggish man who was at least 80 kilograms. Bang! His huge body smashed into the wall of the conference room, causing the wall to crack like a spider web. Ah! The thuggish man who was embedded in the wall screamed in pain while holding his arm that had just been punched. Taking a closer look, the thuggish man's arm was twisted at a slightly unnatural angle in a direction that an ordinary person's arm wouldn't be able to reach. Director Jiang. At the conference table, the president of a police company in a suit stood up abruptly, his eyes wide open as he looked at the thuggish man who was holding his arm and screaming. His eyes were full of shock. The rest of the people present, whether it was the president of the police company or the police officers who were partners, all focused their eyes on Noah, who was standing in the same place without moving at all. Their foreheads were dripping with cold sweat. It was only at this moment that Noah raised his head and glanced in the direction of the screaming Director General. What's wrong with the police recently? Even a guy who only has strength and muscles, without a brain or eyes, can get in? The whole room was silent. You bastard. No, it wasn't that no one was silent. Director Jiang held his seemingly broken arm and struggled to stand up. His eyes full of anger and murderous intent stared at Noah. Kill you. Absolutely kill you. Almost no one doubted Director Jiang's words. Including Noah. Among the more than 700,000 police officers in the world, there were people who followed their own principles and had good fighting instincts. However, there were also people who wanted to find a place to behave atrociously and criminals who wanted to find an identity to hide their crimes. Among them, there were also many thugs. Noah was aware of this, so he didn't hold back. Not to mention, Director Jiang was looking for trouble. Director Jiang wanted to rush out, but he was stopped by a young girl. Mr. Director Jiang, please calm down. The young girl who stood in front of Director Jiang and stopped him was wearing a simple long-sleeved dress and tight pants. She had a pair of big, bright eyes, but she gave people a cold feeling. Are you trying to stop me? Xia sure. Director Jiang's eyes were filled with hostility. Don't forget your identity. Mr. Director Jiang, please calm down first. The little girl named Xia Shi, who looked like the initiator of the Directorate of Generals, unexpectedly said these words calmly. He is the president of Fairy Tale Noah Doria. Director Jiang's expression suddenly froze. Chapter 95. Fairy Tale. Around them, all the police company presidents and police partners were stunned for a moment, and then they started to make noise. He is the president of Fairy Tale? That famous shelter of the cursed child? No wonder, now, in the Tokyo area, there was almost no one who didn't know about the existence of the fairy tale. The reason was very simple, because Fairy Tale was the shelter of the cursed child, who everyone saw as a rat crossing the street. In this era where more than 90% of the people hated the cursed child and rejected the cursed child, even if other people did not look at the cursed child with biased eyes, they would definitely not want to provide any shelter for them. However, Fairy Tale had appeared, and in a short span of a year, it had made a name for itself, becoming an extremely famous existence in the Tokyo area. How could such an existence not attract people's attention? Moreover, in the industry, there was a rumor that the initiator that came out of Fairy Tale had a higher fighting power than the average initiator. Many of the promoters that were recognized by the Fairy Tale and partners with the initiator of Fairy Tale were also very famous, and almost all of them joined Fairy Tale as police officers. In addition, Fairy Tale also turned all the requests from the public into commission forms, allowing the internal police officers to choose from them. They did not hire these police officers based on their salary, but instead shared the profits with each other. This method of operation attracted many foreign police officers, and Fairy Tale became more and more famous at the same time. Therefore, people who did not know about Fairy Tale did not exist in the Tokyo area. Of course, there was a more direct way to express how famous Fairy Tale was. For example, in Fairy Tale, there were at least 10 police officers whose IP was ranked around the top 1,000. And Supervisor Jiang's IP was ranked 1584. In Fairy Tale, there were many police officers who were ranked higher than the general supervisor. Not to mention, in Fairy Tale, there were piles and piles of cursed child that were qualified to be initiators. Even if Supervisor Jiang wanted to find trouble with Noah, he was not qualified at all. This was what Xia Shi wanted to express. Tisk. Supervisor Jiang finally calmed down slowly. Gritting his teeth, he fiercely twisted his broken arm back to its original position. Consider me unlucky. Leaving this sentence, Supervisor Jiang gritted his teeth and returned to the crowd. In the surroundings, all the police officers and company presidents cast all kinds of gazes at Noah. Most of them were examining him, as if they wanted to get to know the rumored president of Fairy Tale again. In contrast to these people, the children who were initiators all cast curious and obviously favorable gazes at Noah. They seemed to have a very good impression of Noah. That should be because Noah not only did not reject the cursed child, but also provided a place for them to stay. Because of this, naturally, there would not be any cursed child who would hate Noah. Xiaoshi also bowed to Noah, causing a smile to appear on Noah's face. He reached out his hand, and while she was still in a daze, he patted her head. Then, he walked to the side of the conference table and sat down at the seat with the fairy tale nameplate. Only then did the young girl named Xiaoshi come back to her senses. She bowed to Noah again, and then returned to Supervisor Zhang's side. However, her gaze was fixed on Noah, and she did not look away. In fact, the rest of the initiators were the same. Phew. Only then did Mugino sit down beside Noah. With Rentaro standing behind him, both of them heaved a huge sigh of relief. You almost scared us to death just now. It's not like you don't know the character of some police officers. Noah said as if nothing had happened. So, when it's time to act, you should act. Otherwise, they will only look down on you. If it's possible, I also want to act. Rentaro could not help but complain. It's a pity that the opponent is too strong. That's someone who is ranked in the top 1,000. If I act, won't I be killed in an instant? Noah did not agree, nor did he deny it. Instead, after a pause, he looked at the door. At the same time, a person wearing a uniform, who seemed to be a high-ranking official, walked into the room. Everyone in the room immediately suppressed the distracting thoughts in their hearts, and focused their attention on the person who came in. The person looked around at everyone in the room, then nodded. Today, I've called the presidents and police officers of all police companies here for no other reason than to entrust a task to you. At this point, the person's expression began to become serious. However, before I explain the content of this task, I'd like to tell everyone that those who wish to reject this task, please do so now. After everyone has heard the task, this task cannot be rejected anymore. Hearing this, many of the presidents of police companies frowned. Even Mugino and Rentaro exchanged glances. What was the difference between this and a compulsory task? However, no one in the room stood up and expressed their rejection. Most of the people present were famous police companies, so naturally, they would not give up before hearing the task. That would only weaken their company's reputation. The uniformed high-ranking official seemed to have expected this. Just as he was about to nod, a voice rang out. This doesn't seem appropriate, does it? Everyone was stunned, and when they saw who had spoken, they were even more stunned. The person who had spoken was Noah. I believe that everyone in the industry is clear about the rules of fairy tale. We will make the task into a list of tasks and post it internally, allowing the internal members to choose. Noah looked at the high-ranking official indifferently. Since this commission cannot be rejected, it means that either the content of the commission is confidential, or the difficulty is too great. The former does not allow me to directly announce the commission to everyone in the inner circle, and the latter may lead to the awkward situation of no one accepting the commission. No matter how I look at it, this is not a commission that is suitable to be called fairy tale, right? The high-ranking official was suddenly speechless. Looking at you, you don't seem to have considered this. Noah narrowed his eyes. Can I assume that you didn't even consider this problem and just casually dragged fairy tale into this? This is a task from the government. The high-ranking official frowned. Could it be that fairy tale wants to reject it? The government? Noah smiled, but there was no smile in his eyes. Unfortunately, we are a non-governmental organization. After saying this, Noah stood up, and without giving any room for conversation, he walked straight out of the door. At this moment, the huge EL screen inlaid on the innermost wall of the conference room suddenly lit up. President Noah, please wait. Chapter 96. President Noah, please wait. When the quiet voice that no one in the Tokyo area would find unfamiliar came from the display screen that suddenly lit up, and when the image on the display screen was printed in the eyes of everyone present fiercely opened their eyes. Almost in the next second, all the presidents of the police companies sitting at the conference table suddenly stood up in a panic. Noah's face also showed a look of surprise, looking at the picture played on the display screen, his eyes were full of surprise. What appeared on the display screen was a very beautiful girl with silver hair, dressed in pure white clothes, covered with a layer of snow. It was the ruler of the Tokyo area, Holy Son of Heaven. Behind Holy Son of Heaven, Tendo Kikuchi followed like a shadow. His eyes met with Noah's eyes for the first time, and when they intertwined, it was as if sparks burst out, making the surrounding temperature seem to drop a lot. Everyone, please don't be too cautious. In the snow-white holy residence, Holy Son of Heaven, who was sitting on a pure white chair, said in a gentle tone. This time, I am just your client. If you can listen to me carefully, I will be very grateful. Hearing the words of Holy Son of Heaven, everyone's expression relaxed a little, but no one sat down. Everyone paid the most basic respect to the girl in front of them, whether in name or in the real sense, the ruler of the Tokyo area. I'm very sorry, Mr. Noah. Holy Son of Heaven cast his eyes on Noah, nodded slightly, and expressed his apology. As Mr. Noah said, this time it is our fault. We didn't consider the situation of fairy tale, and we invited fairy tale without permission, and added such a request. It is a bit rude to fairy tale, but we also ask Mr. Noah to be considerate. As Holy Son of Heaven's words came out, the rest of the people present once again shifted their gazes, converging on Noah. Holy Son of Heaven has taken the initiative to give a way out, this sharp and in the limelight, the president of fairy tale, in the end, will give face to Holy Son of Heaven? Or make things awkward to the point of ending things? Thinking of this, the people present couldn't help but want to see the mind and temperament of this unusually young famous person. Fortunately, he didn't let them down. Noah really didn't think that he was a character, an arrogant young man who didn't want to let go after getting something on him. I only hope that Holy Son of Heaven can carefully consider whether to let fairy tale participate in this mission. Noah's eyes moved back from Tendo Kikuchi and moved to Holy Son of Heaven. If you really want to let fairy tale participate in it, then I hope that Holy Son of Heaven can consider a way that can satisfy both sides. Hearing this, many people present secretly changed their view of Noah. Not only could he see the situation clearly, not blindly pursue it, and not be afraid of power, not to be outdone, and talk to the ruler of the Yodo region like this. The average young man certainly couldn't do this. Therefore, if everyone just had a little understanding of the strength of Noah who defeated the admiral with one blow, then now they had some understanding of Noah's temperament and means. I understand. Holy Son of Heaven nodded after pondering for a while. I will start to explain the content of the mission now, and for this mission, the problem of how fairy tale should cooperate. Later, I hope that Mr. Noah can come to the holy residence, and we will discuss the countermeasures again. How about it? Come to the holy residence? Noah raised his eyebrows and looked at Tendo Kikuchi with a faint smile. This shouldn't be the idea of this Tendo Kikuchi, right? Holy Son of Heaven was speechless. Not only Holy Son of Heaven, but even the rest of the people who heard Noah's tone and Tendo Kikuchi's were stunned. Only Mugging in the corner looked at Noah in a daze, somewhat thoughtful. At this moment when the rest of the people were silent, Tendo Kikuchi looked deeply at Noah, opened his mouth, and said something that made everyone even more stunned. President Noah, I admit that there is a bit of a grudge between us, but you should understand that I will not involve the grudge in official business. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. Grudge? There is a grudge between these two? Noah tilted his head without saying anything, turned around, and returned to his seat again. Then, let's start to explain the mission now. Holy Son of Heaven's expression unnoticeably relaxed, then returned to his usual state. This mission is actually very simple. I hope that everyone can eliminate a protozoa that has sneaked into the Tokyo area, and retrieve a box like this from the protozoa's body. After saying that, a window appeared on the screen showing Holy Son of Heaven, showing a lead silver suitcase that was specially marked with the words, Mission Target, and beside it was a number. That was the reward for completing the mission. The box itself looked extremely ordinary, and there was nothing out of the ordinary about it. However, the value of the reward indicated at the side caused the surrounding atmosphere to be filled with confusion. Of course, it wasn't because the reward was too low. On the contrary, the reward for completing the mission was too high. It was so high that it was completely unbelievable that this was the reward for eliminating a protozoa and retrieving an ordinary box. In an instant, the scene entered a state of absolute silence. Other than the police officers who were usually accompanied by Death, the rest of the people present were all the presidents of the police force companies. To be able to get to this position, even if they weren't very smart, they were people who could keenly sense that something was wrong at certain important moments. And this time, there was obviously something wrong with the commission. In this regard, Holy Son of Heaven seemed to have no intention of explaining further. He closed his eyes and said to himself, "If there is no problem, please start working on this matter now." Suddenly, Mugging hurriedly raised her hand, and just as she was about to ask something, Noah suddenly pressed on her shoulder. Mugging looked at Noah with some surprise. "What's wrong?" Noah didn't speak, but stared closely at a certain position at the conference table in front of him, leading everyone's gaze in that direction. Ah! The next moment, next to the position Noah was staring at, the two presidents of the police force companies let out a cry of surprise and retreated to both sides. "Oh!" At the same time, in the same position, such a voice sounded. "I thought at least until I made a sound to alert someone, but I didn't expect there to be someone with such keen senses. How interesting." The speaker was a tall man. He was at least 190 centimeters tall. His limbs and body were very slender. He wore a wine-red tuxedo with fine stripes, a tall hat on his head, and a clown-like mask on his face. His outfit was very strange. Such a strange person put his feet on the conference table and sat in a position that was just empty, which made the people around him very shocked. What about the other one?" Without giving the people around him time to be shocked, Noah said in an indifferent tone. "Let her come out too." "You even noticed this?" The man let out a sharp strange laugh and stood up. "In that case, little Benet, you come out and say hello to everyone." As soon as the voice fell, a small figure suddenly fell from the ceiling and appeared on the conference table. Chapter 97. Swish. Everyone in the room finally calmed down a little. They took out their guns and aimed at the two people standing at the conference table, their eyes fixed on them. A man in a tuxedo who looked like he was going to a costume party didn't seem to notice the actions of the people around him. He took off his hat and bowed deeply to the screen that showed the image of the Holy Son of Heaven. "Let me introduce myself. My surname is Leech, full name is Leech Ing-yin." After that, the man named Leech Ing-yin put his hand on the girl next to him. The girl had short wavy hair and wore a dress with trimmings. There were 2 scabbards on her back. From the shape and length, it should be 2 scabbards for Kodachi. "This is my initiator. She is also my daughter. My name is Leech Benet. I'm 10 years old this year." The young girl used an extremely naive tone and expression to say these words. However, the words that she said next caused the hearts of many people present to turn cold. "Hey, Dad, they are all pointing their guns at us. Can I cut them?" When she said this, Leech Benet's small body released an extremely strong murderous aura that seemed to want to prove the authenticity of her words. The strong murderous aura told everyone present that the initiator in front of them was not only unusual, but also had killed many people. Noah furrowed his brows tightly as he looked at Benet Leech Jr. with a serious expression. "You have killed people?" Leech Benet blinked and looked at Noah. His eyes were suddenly dyed crimson. It was the symbol of the cursed child who released the power in his body. Leech Benet, who directly released his power, had an innocent and evil expression. He looked at Noah and said this. "Do you also want to be killed by me?" Hearing this, Noah understood. The child in front of him already took killing people as a matter of course. No matter what, it was impossible to save this child and let this child live the life of an ordinary person. This made Noah, who had always wanted the cursed children to live a happy life like ordinary people and created fairy tale, couldn't help but feel sad. His gaze that was fixed on Benet the Leech also turned into pity and sympathy. Leech Benet wrinkled his little nose and looked at Leech Ing-yin. "Dad, the way this person looks at me makes me very uncomfortable." It's fine if I don't kill others, but I will only kill him. Is that okay? Oh. Li Qingyin glanced at Noah, pondered for a moment, and then spoke. Since he made my cute daughter feel uncomfortable, then let's kill him. Leech little Benet immediately smiled happily. Don't you? Ryutaru, who had been silently holding his gun, couldn't help but yell. Without hesitation, he pulled the trigger of his gun. Using this as a signal, all the gunmen on the scene pulled the trigger one after another. Bang! 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 Endless gunshots and smoke filled the air. Bullets from all directions pierced through the air and shot towards Li Qingyin's body. However, the scene that appeared in the next moment caused everyone to reveal an expression of disbelief and shock. Dang! 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 What? No one dared to believe their eyes. However, this was indeed happening in reality. Seiko, Mugino, Rentaro, and the others' expressions all changed. The surrounding people also stopped shooting in a daze. Even Noah's gaze wavered for a moment, then gradually condensed. It was like a scene from a story. Li Qingyin had his hands behind his back, and bullets stopped in the air around him. This caused a voice to appear in the crowd. How is this possible? Of course it's possible. Li Qingyin exaggeratedly spread his hands as if he was acting. Please allow me to continue my unfinished self-introduction. I am the former Ground Self-Defense Forces Eastern Division's 787th Mechanized Special Unit, New Human Creation Project, Li Qingyin. New Human Creation Project? Gasps could be heard echoing in the air. New Human Creation Project? Noah repeated with a face full of confusion. What was that? Although Noah did not know what it was, he temporarily suppressed the doubts in his heart and turned to look at Mugeng and Rentaro beside him. Therefore, Noah saw it clearly. For a moment, Rentaro's expression was completely stiff, and his eyes trembled violently. Mugino was also taken aback, and then glanced at Rentaro. Whoosh! Just as Noah was feeling puzzled, a figure shot in his direction like a bullet fired from a gun. Noah's eyes suddenly turned cold. Clang! A crisp sound of collision resounded. Huh! A surprised voice rang out. Oh! Li Qingyin, who was standing at the conference table, could not help but let out a surprised voice. He actually blocked Benet Jr.'s attack. Benet Jr., who was originally standing next to Li Qingyin, had unknowingly appeared in front of Noah. She jumped up, and the two kodachi at her waist were tightly held in her hands, and she slashed towards Noah's direction. However, Benet Jr.'s two kodachi were blocked by Noah. It was a large modified black revolver with an extremely domineering and gorgeous design. Screech! The kodachi and the revolver violently rubbed against each other, causing countless sparks to fly. Benet Jr. kept using her strength, but she was still unable to break through Noah's defense, which made her very surprised. Immediately, Benet Leech decisively retreated, returning to Li Qingyin's side. For the first time, his deep red eyes stared at Noah with an extremely serious expression. Who are you? Hearing this, Noah looked straight at Benet Jr. Then let me introduce myself. I am the president of Fairy Tale, Noah Dole. Fairy Tale? Benet the Leech was slightly startled. Fairy Tale. Li Qingyin suddenly looked at Noah. So that's how it is. You're the famous cursed child, Shelter. Cut the crap. Perhaps because of Benet Jr., Noah's tone was different from before, and it was full of impatience. You're in the limelight here. Don't tell me you're actually planning to perform? Oh. Li Qingyin was startled awake. I almost forgot about the important matter. Saying this, Li Qingyin turned her head and looked at Elysian Son of Heaven, laughing out loud. I actually only came here for one purpose, and that is to tell the head of state that as a former police officer, I can also accept the head of state's request. How about it? Elysian Son of Heaven did not speak. He only stared at Li Qingyin, causing Leech Yin to laugh even more happily and sharply. Of course, that thing, if we're lucky enough to get it first, please allow me to use it for a short period of time. Hearing this, Elysian son of heaven seemed to give up and closed his eyes. What are you talking about? Mugging stepped forward and asked. What's in the box? It's not my job to explain things to the client. Leech Yin pressed on his hat and looked at Noah. We'll meet again. After saying this, Leech Yin and Benet Jr. jumped up at the same time, broke the glass of the meeting room's window, jumped out, and disappeared from the bottom of the building. Noah looked around at the people who were at a loss and slowly narrowed his eyes. Chapter 98. Tokyo District 1, Holy Residence. Pushing open the luxurious door in front of him, Noah walked into the hall of the holy residence that he had visited not long ago. I didn't expect to meet you so soon, just like the last time they met. Xing Tianzi, who was sitting on the sofa with an elegant posture, opened his eyes and looked forward. President Noah, please take a seat. Noah looked at Holy Sun, who didn't seem to have changed since their last meeting. He didn't carry a magic sword pouch this time. He first looked around Holy Sun, then sat on the sofa in front of him. That old guy isn't with you? This is my idea, Elysian son of heaven emphasized. After all, when the two of you meet, the atmosphere will not be good. It's just not good? Noah said faintly. You should know that unless he lets go of his inner thoughts, we will have to face each other head-on one day. The holy child's expression became unnatural after hearing Noah's straightforward explanation of his relationship with the celestial child. If it was someone else with the same status as Noah saying this, Holy Sun definitely wouldn't have reacted this way. After all, the difference in status between Noah and the celestial child's chrysanthemum prime was obvious. On one side, he was just an ordinary police officer who founded a civilian organization. On the other side, he was the person with the highest authority in the entire district. Once the two of them fought, no matter how one looked at it, no one felt that the former had a chance of winning. However, Noah, in such a terrible situation, not only did he neutralize all of the methods that Chrysanthemum Celestial Child had secretly used against him in this year, but he was also evenly matched with Chrysanthemum Celestial Child. Furthermore, he even made Fairy Tale bigger and bigger. As the person whom the celestial child Chrysanthemum Prime was assisting, the sage son of heaven had seen the celestial child Chrysanthemum Prime, who always had a calm expression even if the sky fell, furrowing his brows when others mentioned Noah and Fairy Tale. It was a very troublesome expression. Thus, he knew that if Noah really wanted to do this, he would be able to deal a heavy blow to the celestial Chrysanthemum Prime. No. It should be said that if it wasn't for the fairy's tale, the lone Noah might have already dealt with the celestial Chrysanthemum Prime. Holy Sun was secretly shocked when he realized that he had such a high opinion of Noah. He quickly took a deep breath, suppressed the distracting thoughts in his mind, and casually changed the topic. Mr. Noah, this time, I want to talk to you about the request and the leech's shadow. Before that, you have to answer 2 of my questions. Noah raised his hand and stopped the Elysian child from speaking. His eyes met the Elysian child's beautiful face. First, what is the new human creation plan? Mr. Noah doesn't know? Holy Sun was a little surprised. That was the human weapon creation project that humans initiated in the early years to fight against the protozoa. Human weapon? Yes, Holy Sun explained. After performing surgeries with extremely low success rates on dying patients, the metal of protogut animals, that is, the mechanical parts made of aluminum, were assembled on the human body. Thus, powerful soldiers were created. Soldiers created specifically to fight against Holy Sun. Noah pondered for a moment, then asked. Why haven't we heard of such an existence now? Because that plan has been frozen for a long time, Holy Sun reminded him. The mechanical soldiers of the new human creation plan are indeed very powerful. Holy Sun below, stage 4, is almost no match for them. However, later on, the cursed child appeared in the eyes of humans. After Holy Sun's reminder, Noah also understood. Regardless of whether it was the mechanical soldiers of the new human creation plan, or the cursed child, they were individuals that had the power to rival Holy Sun. If the two were to be compared, who would win and who would lose? Noah was not sure. However, if he thought about it carefully, with the existence of the cursed child, there was no need for the mechanical soldiers to appear at all. After all, it was obvious that the cost of creating such powerful mechanical soldiers was definitely not small. On the other hand, the cursed child was a special individual that was naturally born from the mother's body without any cost. On one side, it was a mechanical soldier that required a high cost, and the number of mechanical soldiers could not be guaranteed. On the other side, it was children that did not require any cost at all. Since their combat power was comparable to Holy Sun, it was obvious which one to choose. When he thought of this, Noah could not help but laugh. His laugh was extremely sarcastic. In the end, the children that are ostracized and hated by humans are fighting to protect humans. The weapons that humans have spent a lot of money to create want to be the enemy of humans. This script is really interesting. Elysian's son of heaven opened his mouth slightly, but he couldn't say anything. Second question. Noah did not want to beat around the bush anymore. What's in that box? This. Holy Sun showed a rare look of hesitation, but after a while, he sighed again. I'm sorry, Mr. Noah. I can't tell you what is in the box clearly. I can only tell you that it is a dangerous item called 7 Stars Legacy. Holy Sun's expression gradually became serious and solemn. As for its use, it is able to summon Holy Sun's Stage V Zodiac archaic animals. Noah couldn't help but raise his head and look at Holy Son of Heaven. After confirming that Holy Son of Heaven wasn't lying, his heart sank. Zodiac. That was the general term for Holy Sun's Stage V archaic animals. During the Archaic Animal War, which was the survival battle that almost caused the extinction of humans 10 years ago, there were 11 archaic animals that displayed extremely terrifying power. They were far more powerful than Stage 4 archaic animals, and once, they almost caused the extinction of humans. Humans gave these 11 archaic animals that possessed extraordinary power the names of the 12 signs of the zodiac, as their code names. Among them, Cancer was originally empty, Taurus and Virgo had already been eliminated by the first and second IP ranking initiator, leaving only 9 Stage V archaic animals. Noah had only heard of it once. It was said that they had huge bodies that far exceeded Stage 4 archaic animals, hard outer skin that was completely ineffective against normal weapons, molecular-level regeneration ability, and the ability to not be affected by a monolith. In other words, if that whatever 7 Stars Legacy could really summon Stage V Zodiac to Tokyo, then the Stage V archaic animals that was not affected by a monolith would definitely bring a devastating disaster to the people of Tokyo. Noah finally understood why he had to pay so much to retrieve a small box. It turned out that it was a dangerous item that could summon a mass extinction disaster. Phew. Noah slowly exhaled and closed his eyes. What do you plan to do? Right now, almost all of the top police officers in Tokyo have already set out to find the archaic animals that hid the box in their bodies. Sheng Tianzi said word by word. In order to find the box faster than the leech shadow Een, Mr. Noah, I hope you can lend me your strength. Following this sentence, in the hall, a heavy feeling that made people unable to breathe filled the air. Under Sheng Tianzi's unwavering gaze, Noah kept silent with his eyes closed until Sheng Tianzi couldn't help but feel anxious. Then, he finally opened his mouth. I will let the fairy tale police officers participate in this operation. Sheng Tianzi heaved a sigh of relief, his pure and holy face slowly hung an extremely beautiful smile. Chapter 99. Noah, who was sitting on the sofa, was flipping through a document. Li Ching-yin, originally ranked 134th in IP. Due to excessive killing, his ranking was frozen, and his police license was revoked. Originally a human weapon created under the New Human Creation Project. His internal organs and most of his body were replaced with machinery. he can produce a repulsive force field for defense. In theory, his ability can withstand the attack of protozoa, stage 4. Even anti-tank rifle shots can be deflected. Based on current speculation, his strength is at least in the top 100 IP ranks of the promoter. Extremely dangerous. Noah silently turned the document in his hand to the next page. Leech Benet Jr., originally ranked 134th in IP, a Mantis-type initiator. Due to excessive killing, his ranking was frozen. Almost invincible in close combat within the range of swords and knives. Even in the initiator, he has a high level of physical ability. Weapon used is a kodachi. Based on current speculation, his strength is at least in the top 100 IP ranks of the initiator. Likes to kill, extremely dangerous. In addition to these, Noah also had all the information about Leech Ingyin and Leech Benet Jr. Before they were still police officers, there were at least 10 pages of densely packed information. This information was what Noah asked Xingzi to help him find when he left the holy residence. Noah still had a lot of information he didn't know about Leech Ingyin. Although he promised Xingzi that he would let the Fairy's Tale police officers participate in the search for the legacy of the 7 stars, and the whereabouts of the Leech father and daughter, he himself was still in a state of observation. This world was far from as simple as Noah's original world. Not to mention other things, just the dark side of human nature, the intricate structure of the world, the sinister nature of the human heart, and so on, was not something the people in Noah's original world could compare to. After staying here for a year, Noah, who was fully aware of this, wasn't reckless enough to lend his strength just because of the Holy Sun's request. At the very least, Noah wouldn't act on his own accord until he was certain that the Leech Shadow Een would truly bring disaster to Fairy Tale, and why he wanted to summon Stage V to the Tokyo area. He didn't want to be used as a tool to do bad things with good intentions. Therefore, Noah needed to understand what kind of person Leech Ingyin was. However, a small head with 2 ponytails poked out from behind Noah. She opened her big round eyes and looked at the information in Noah's hands in boredom. Ranked 134 in the original IP rankings? Is this little guy really that powerful? Aren't you a little one yourself? A head slightly bigger than the former, but with waist-length straight black hair, poked out from the other side of Noah's back and said thoughtfully. Before the IP ranking was frozen, it was already 134. This Leech Ingyin and Leech Benet Jr. are definitely much stronger than before the ranking was frozen. Who knows, they might really be monsters in the top 100. Do we really want to be enemies with such opponents? Finally, a head with a listless expression appeared, and its tone was a little uneasy. Even if all the top police in Tokyo were dispatched, the odds of winning against such monsters shouldn't be high, right? Listening to the 3 voices from behind, feeling the warmth of the heads that poked out from his left shoulder, right shoulder, and head, Noah sighed. Why are you still here? Is the Tiantong Civilian Police Company not going to participate in this operation? I'm the president. This was the president of the Tiantong Civilian Police Company, who ran a company with 0 income last month and came to ask for help this month. Otherwise, even eating was a problem. How can the president personally go out to work? I'm just the initiator. This was the words of a 10-year-old girl with her head held high as if she was proud of herself. Before Rintaro, the promoter, makes a move, this concubine has to play her part. Otherwise, it will ruin our reputation as the Fairy Tale. I'm also waiting for the report on the whereabouts of the mission target, okay? Don't make it sound like I'm afraid of death and don't dare to come out, okay? This was the complaint of a police employee who had been bullied. Also, Yen Zhu, you are now my initiator and a member of the Tiantong Civilian Police Company. Even if you want to emphasize your identity, you should emphasize this, right? Why did it become a corruption of the name Fairy Tale? Even if this concubine has already joined the Sky Tong Civilian Guard Company, this concubine is still a member of Fairy Tale. Yen Zhu jumped up and down as she yelled out. This concubine's school is here, and this concubine's home is here. This concubine's friends and companions are all here. Even if thou are this concubine's promoter, thou cannot make this concubine leave Fairy's Tale. I don't mean to make you leave the fairy tale, right? That is what thou meant. Hey, you two, now is the time to talk about something very important, can you not quarrel? There were 3 heads less than 20 centimeters away from his head, and they were quarreling. What kind of feeling was that? Anyway, Noah felt that the noisy voices in the fairy tale were much cuter than these 3 voices. At that moment, Noah could only say something. I know that your company's scale is not big, and you don't have a specialized intelligence organization to collect information about the mission. If you want to participate in this mission, you can only wait for news from other places, and try to be a step faster. I also promise that the fairy tale intelligence department will immediately inform you if there is any news, so can you please wait obediently and not disturb me? Hearing this, Rentaro immediately shut his mouth, and Mugino's face showed a satisfied and proud expression. Noah clearly saw it, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. So, this girl is deliberately making trouble for me, to force me to say these words? Speaking of which, President, this mission is the first time that all of our fairy's tale police officers have been mobilized, and you've personally issued the order for them to be mobilized. President, are you not going to personally participate? Yen Zhu said eagerly. If President personally takes action, those 2 guys definitely won't be able to escape. It's not that I haven't thought of personally looking for them. Noah shook his head and narrowed his eyes. But there is something that I am very concerned about, and I must investigate it clearly first. Something that you are concerned about? Mugino came over and asked curiously. What is it? Noah smiled but did not answer, which made Mugino somewhat dissatisfied. It was unknown what Mugino thought of, but she suddenly asked. When we were in the Ministry of Defense, Tentong Chrysanthemum said that he had a grudge with you. What grudge do you have? On the side, Rentaro and Yen Zhu's gaze also turned to Noah. Let's not talk about the grudge between me and Tentong Chrysanthemum for now. Mugino, I remember that Tentong Chrysanthemum is your grandfather, and also Rentaro's stepfather, right? Noah raised his head and looked at Mugino and Rentaro with a meaningful gaze. If I say that I want to kill Tentong Chrysanthemum, what would you do? Rentaro and Yen Zhu were stunned. To Noah's surprise, Mugino's eyes lit up, and a fierce expression appeared on her face. I want to too. Chapter 100. Mugen's words instantly made the temperature of the scene drop below freezing point. Rentaro and Yen Zhu lowered their heads and remained silent when they saw Mugino's expression that resembled that of a malicious spirit and the hatred in his eyes. Even Noya furrowed his brows. What is going on? What does she mean by, I want to? Mugeng wants to kill Tentong Chrysanthemum? But isn't Tentong Chrysanthemum Mugeng's grandfather? After thinking about it this way, Noah realized a problem that he didn't have time to think about before. Tentong Mugeng. From her surname, it could be seen that Mugeng was a member of the famous Tentong clan in Tokyo, led by Tentong Chrysanthemum. Moreover, she was a direct blood relative. As the granddaughter of Tentong Chrysanthemum, who was like the clan leader of the Tentong clan, Mugeng should be a spoiled young lady. However, although Mugeng did study in a famous aristocratic school, other than that, even in her private life, Mugeng lived very frugally. The Tiantong Civilian Guard Company that she ran was even a small company that was not well known. She did not have the slightest image of a rich young lady at all. Moreover, as far as Noah knew, Mugeng seemed to have left the Tentong clan for some reason. Even Ryutaru, who was the adopted son of Tentong Chrysanthemum and Mugeng's childhood friend, also left the Tentong clan and established his own clan. Obviously, the hatred that Mugeng showed now must be related to why Mugeng and Ryutaru left the Tentong clan. This made Noah confirm a fact. In other words, Noah looked straight at Mugeng and Ryutaru. If I really have a grudge against Tentong Chrysanthemum and plan to kill him, you won't stop me, right? This. Ryutaru hesitated for a moment, then dropped his shoulders like he gave up and said in a deep voice. I don't know. Compared to the confused Ryutaru, Mugeng was much more decisive. Don't say that I won't stop you. If there is anything I can do to deal with the Tentong clan, no matter what it is, I beg you, count me in. Mugging. Yenju was at a loss. Miss Mugging. Rintaro closed his eyes, as if he didn't want to see mugging like this. Looking at Mugino, Ryotaro, and Yenju, Noah had a rough idea of what was going on. After pondering for a while, he spoke. Empyrean Chrysanthemum said that I have a grudge with him. Actually, this is wrong. Mugging, Ryotaro, and Yenju were all stunned. I don't have any personal grudges with him. If I did, it would be easy to solve. Noah didn't hide anything and explained straightforwardly. It's just that he wants all the cursed children to go to hell, while I want all the cursed children to live a life like heaven. Therefore, he is against all the cursed children, while I want to protect all the cursed children. We just have different standpoints. Hearing this, Mugino, Ryotaro, and Yenju looked at each other and understood what was going on. Guild leader. Yenju stood up and loudly declared her position. I will stand on your side. Seeing Yenju's indignant expression, Noah couldn't help but laugh. Just as he was about to say something, a melodious ringtone sounded in his pocket. Mugging, Ryotaro, and Yenju's faces all tensed up. Noah's movements also paused. Then, he calmly took out the phone in his pocket and answered the call. How is it? On the other end of the phone, a voice kept ringing. After a while, it stopped, causing Noah to nod his head. I understand. With that, Noah hung up the phone and his face sank. Seeing this scene, the other 3 people present had a bad premonition in their hearts. What's wrong? Ryotaro asked nervously. Did you find the Lich Ingin? No. Noah raised his eyes and looked at the 3 people in front of him. However, there is reliable information that indicates that the protogut animal with the legacy of the 7 stars in its body has been dealt with. As for the mission targets box, someone witnessed it being taken away by a man wearing a mask and a tuxedo. Wadash. Mugino, Ryotaro, and Yenju couldn't help but stand up. Needless to say, the 3 of them clearly knew the consequences of the 7 stars legacy being taken away by the Lich Ingin. How could this be? Mugino clenched his teeth. The Lich Ingin only had one partner by his side, and he had to evade our search. On our side, almost all of the famous police companies in Tokyo were mobilized. Logically speaking, we shouldn't have been slower than the Lich Ingin. Even the news should have been received so long ago. How could this be? It's very simple. Noah stood up, the corners of his mouth curling into a cold arc. Someone blocked the news. You're saying that someone blocked the news? Ryotaro seemed to have thought of something as his face stiffened. In other words, there's someone. Mugino raised his voice. There's someone behind the Lich Ingin. Noah didn't say anything as he picked up the bag on his shoulder and walked towards the door. President. Yenju hurriedly called out. Where do you plan to go? Noah didn't give Mugino, Ryotaro, and Yenju a chance to react as he directly pushed the door open and walked out, leaving only this place. Saint Residence. Leaving Mugino, Ryotaro, and Yenju behind, Noah walked out of the area where the fairy tale was located. It was surrounded by ruins and belonged to the outer area of District 39. He walked forward at a leisurely pace. However, this scene didn't last long. When the fairy tale was almost out of sight, Noah stopped walking. A light drizzle was falling from the sky, making the already dark sky even darker. Noah stood in the rain and didn't care about his hair and clothes that were gradually getting wet from the drizzle. He took the bag from his shoulder and forcefully smashed it on the ground. Bang! Gravel flew everywhere, and the tip of the pouch containing the Magic Knight's sword also sank into the ground, standing upright. At this moment, Noah suddenly reached out his hand and pulled out a gun from his back. He pointed at the direction of one of the broken walls in the ruins and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang! The bullet's power was comparable to an anti-tank rifle. It was enough to pierce through heavy armored vehicles as it rubbed against the air and the rain. It drew a fiery light as it flashed through the air and hit the broken wall. Boom! With a loud sound, the broken wall was directly penetrated, creating a hole the size of a wash basin. Whoosh! However, before that, two shadows actually jumped from behind the wall and landed on the top of the broken wall. As expected of the guild leader of Fairy Tale, the famous shelter of the cursed child. Even the way they greet each other is so special. However, I personally like this method. The people standing on the top of the broken wall were Leech Ingyin and Leech Benet Jr. that the entire Tokyo region was looking for. We meet again. Leech Benet Jr. held two pitch-black odachi made from Japanese. His eyes had already turned dark red and he looked eager to try. Dad, can I continue to cut him down this time? Not this time, my daughter. Leech Ingyin laughed as if he was giving a speech. At least, before we finished talking, Noah directly lowered his hand that was holding the gun and coldly looked at Leech Ingyin. Is this all that you want to say? Then I'll just directly state my intentions. Leech Ingyin faced Noah and extended his hand. Do you want to join us? Chapter 101. Join you? Even Noah couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. You want me to destroy the Tokyo area with you? Only the Tokyo area? Leech Ingyin first said this sentence with a deep meaning, then immediately let out a low laugh again. President Noah, as far as I know, a year ago, you used your private property to buy cheap land in the outer area, built a large number of houses, schools, hospitals, and even research facilities there, and took in all the cursed children and established Fairy Tale. Noah didn't answer, but the gaze he looked at Leech Ingyin with became colder and colder. But Leech Ingyin didn't seem to notice Noah's gaze, and continued to speak. Fairy Tale became famous after it was first established and entered people's sight, because no one thought that there would be such a stupid person who would provide shelter for a group of children who could turn into monsters at any time. As everyone knew, once a human was infected with the protozoan virus, which was best at modifying DNA, would transform a living human into a monster in a very short time. There was only one kind of human being that was an exception. That was the cursed child. However, that didn't mean that the protozoan virus in the cursed child's body would obediently provide them with power, allowing them to become superhumans. The protozoan virus lurking in the cursed child's body was also extremely dangerous. Unlike humans who were directly infected with the protozoan virus in the cursed child, who was infected with the protozoan virus from the embryonic stage, wouldn't break out all at once. Instead, it lurked in the cursed child's body, slowly modifying their bodies. This naturally allowed the cursed children to obtain self-regenerative abilities and strength that exceeded that of ordinary people. However, the cursed children were also unable to avoid being infected by the protozoa virus. The virus in their bodies was still corroding their bodies. Therefore, the cursed child would sooner or later turn into a protozoan. No one knew how long this process would take. People only knew that once the invasion rate of the protozoan virus in the cursed child's body exceeded 50%, the cursed child would turn into a protozoan and would no longer be able to maintain human form and rationality. This was also the reason why many of the cursed children were willing to become initiators and accept the management of the International Initiator Supervision Organization, ISO, as well as partner with the police. This was because the International Initiator Supervision Institute, ISO, had an agent that could slow down the invasion of the protozoan virus in the cursed child's body to a certain extent. Back then, Noah had put in a lot of effort in order to obtain the formula for the ascension preparation. Otherwise, many of the cursed children in Fairy's Tale would have turned into primitive animals long ago. Why would you want to establish Fairy Tale? I can roughly guess the reason. Leech Ingyin stood on top of the wall and looked down at Noah. However, in order to make Fairy Tale operate, no matter if it was a success or a failure, President Noah, you must have encountered a lot of difficulties, right? Hearing this, Noah's hand holding the gun slightly tightened. The difficulty Leech Ingyin was referring to wasn't the difficulty of establishing Fairy Tale or the setbacks he had suffered in the process. Instead, he was referring to the difficulties others had created for him. Let's not talk about the Tendo chrysanthemum, who originally hated the cursed child, and talk about the plundered generation of the commoners in the Tokyo area. Basically all wanted the cursed child to die, so how could they be willing to let them have a good life? Therefore, when Fairy's Tale was first established, there would be so-called volunteers forming groups almost every day. They would go to the entrance of Fairy's Tale to raise flags and protest. They would curse the existence of Fairy's Tale all day long. There were even some radicals who wanted to sneak into Fairy Tale and specifically sabotage it. Noah knew that for these people who were completely blinded by hatred, it was useless to say anything more. Not to mention, Noah did not have a good impression of these pitiful people who had hateful things to begin with. Therefore, during the 1-year period after Fairy Tale was established, Noah did not know how many times he personally made a move to throw these people back to the city like garbage. For this reason, these people did not stop jumping around. Not to mention the many street protests, they also gathered together from time to time, planning to do something. Because of this, the reason why Fairy Tale became so famous. Perhaps, these people who paraded on the streets from time to time to give free publicity to Fairy Tale were also a big reason. And from then on, Noah and Fairy Tale became known as the shelter of the cursed child. Li Qingyin's words made Noah recall all the things that had happened in the past year in his mind. His grip on the spear tightened. President Noah, I have to say, it's not just me, but many people are surprised that you can still manage Fairy Tale under such circumstances. Li Qingyin seemed to be reminding him. But, have you not thought of eliminating all these people who only know how to talk and will not get along with you no matter what? Noah did not understand what Li Qingyin was hinting at. He could be considered to have lived in vain. This is the reason why you invited me to join you? This can only be considered the reason why you joined us. Li Qingyin corrected him. And the reason why we invited you is because you are very strong. Oh. Noah curled his lips, a bit of sarcasm appearing in his tone. Are you worried that I will interfere with your plans? This is also one of the reasons. Li Qingyin pressed down on the hat on his head and once again extended his hand towards Noah. Come. Come with me. Let's destroy this world together. Destroy the world? This sentence was like a basin of cold water that was poured on Noah's heart. Immediately after, a thick flame of anger rose in Noah's heart. Destroy the world? Destroy the world that would be as happy as a child when it was repaired and would be extremely happy to meet him? What a joke. Noah slowly raised his head, a pair of eyes that were filled with unprecedented anger. The vast magical power in his body also boiled, turning into a strong wind that rose from Noah's body. If you say what you just said again, I will make you stay here forever. With Noah as the center, a gust of wind formed by mana spread out wildly, blowing away the surrounding ruins and causing them to collapse completely. Li Qingyin and Leech Benet Jr.'s pupils constricted at the same time. They raised their hands and blocked in front of them. Their bodies tensed up, and an extremely strong sense of danger rose in their hearts. The nephew and daughter, who could not sense magical power, could only feel a strong aura locking onto them, telling them that Noah's words were true. You. Li Qingyin could not hide the shock in his voice. Who exactly are you? Father. Father. Leech Benet Jr.'s crazed and bloodthirsty appearance changed. Her face was filled with fear as she tugged at Li Qingyin's clothes. We will die. We will die, Li Qingyin's eyes flashed with uncertainty as he gritted his teeth. Let's go. Without any hesitation, Li Qingyin and Benet Jr. leaped up and disappeared from the scene. The wind gradually stopped. Noah, who was standing alone in the ruins, closed his eyes tightly and allowed the rain to splash on his body. He did not speak for a long time. Chapter 102. In the dark conference room, a deathly stillness pervaded the air. Led by Xing Tianzi, all the top officials in the Tokyo area were gathered in the headquarters. Looking at the real-time display in front of them, they all had ashen faces. Taking a closer look, the image displayed on the large monitor was a hellish scene. In a word, it was a pile of corpses covered in blood. In the middle of the blood and corpses that had just died, a man in a tuxedo with a mask and a little girl with 2 kodachi stood there. Although there was not a single drop of blood on them, there was no doubt that they were the ones who had caused this hellish scene. In the dark conference room, many officials' faces turned ashen. They covered their mouths and looked like they wanted to vomit but didn't dare to. Xing Tianzi's originally flawless face seemed to have become a bit paler, but he still stared at the large screen in front of him without moving his gaze for a moment. Only Chrysanthemum Prime Minister maintained his usual expressionless appearance from beginning to end. He was not affected by the bloody scene and was still calm. Just a minute ago, the high-ranking officials present had personally witnessed the scene of the police officers lying all over the ground provoking the father and daughter pair. In the end, all of them were attacked by the other party and fell one after another, dyeing the ground red with their own blood. Among these police officers, there were at least 10 teams that were ranked in the top 1,000. Under such circumstances, a total of 30 teams of police officers almost couldn't last a minute in the hands of Li Qingyin and Li Binei and were all killed. It was easy to imagine how shocked the high-ranking officials were when they witnessed all of this with their own eyes. Sitting at the head of the table, Xing Tianzi was not defeated by the bloody scene and the cruel reality. He adjusted his emotions and forced himself to calm down, then looked at one of the officials. What about the other police officers? Most of them have already set off to the unexplored area where the leech father and daughter are. The official was sweating as he answered with a somewhat hoarse voice. However, even the first group of police officers to set off will need more than 2 hours to reach the area where the leech father and daughter are. No matter what, they won't be able to make it in time. When these words came out, a touch of despair appeared on the faces of many officials. An hour ago, the news that Li Qingyin had obtained the legacy of the 7 stars, and was rushing to an unexplored area, preparing to summon the protozoa, Stage V, had reached the ears of the top authorities in Tokyo. Xing Tianzi, who understood that the situation had begun to become irreversible, immediately called for a battle conference. All the top authorities in Tokyo area gathered here to discuss countermeasures while notifying the police companies involved in the operation to pursue the leech father and daughter. Now, an hour had passed. The fate of the first group of police officers who arrived at the area was presented in front of everyone's eyes. It was only then that everyone realized that they had really underestimated this police team that was originally ranked 134th in the IP rankings. They had also underestimated the difference between 100 police officers and 1,000 police officers. If this continues, the Stage V will arrive in the Tokyo area. At that time, it will. Looking at the big screen in front of him, a senior official spoke hesitantly. Speaking of which, why did Li Qingyin mercilessly kill all the promoters, but not the initiators? Yes. The ones who died were all the promoters in the police team. As for the initiators, they were all knocked out and imprisoned by Li Qingyin and Li Binei Jr. With the leech father and daughter's personality of killing without blinking, they shouldn't be merciful to children, right? Xing Tianzi naturally also noticed this phenomenon and muttered to himself. I'm afraid, he did it too. Before Xing Tianzi could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by an indifferent voice from outside the conference room. To restrain me, right? Following this sentence, the door of the conference room was pushed open. A young man carrying a bag over his shoulder and a piece of paper in one hand walked in as if no one was around. Behind him, a few guards were rushing over, as if they wanted to stop him from entering the conference room. Looking at the young man who suddenly barged in, everyone present couldn't react. Even Xing Tianzi was slightly startled and spoke in surprise. President Noah? It was none other than Noah. With a rare cold expression on his face, Noah didn't pay attention to the people who were staring at him in a daze. He walked straight through the room, came to the front of the conference table, and looked at the screen. He knows that I value the cursed child, so he wants to use those children as hostages to prevent me from personally finding him. Li Qingyin, he really used all kinds of methods, only then did everyone realize what had happened. President Noah, you can't just barge in anywhere. Chrysanthemum Tentong narrowed his eyes and said. This conference room is a place set up for national defense issues. If an ordinary person barges in, it won't end with just a few words of reprimand. Do you understand? Noah glanced at Chrysanthemum Tentong and didn't say anything. He directly placed the piece of paper in his hand in front of the people present. It was a piece of paper with a circle in the middle. The circle was filled with names and seals that were stamped on the outside of the circle. It was just like a joint signature. It was written on the outside of the circle. Everyone's eyes couldn't help but shift to this piece of paper. When they saw the contents of the paper clearly, they all gasped. This was a joint agreement. The purpose was very simple. It was to gather like-minded comrades in activities similar to peasant uprisings. In order to conceal the identity of the mastermind would be drawn in a circle, and the rest of the signatories were all accomplices. Everyone present clearly saw the title of the joint agreement, 7 Stars Inheritance Theft Plan Joint Agreement. Suddenly, everyone's gaze instinctively turned to the person next to him and subconsciously retreated. This person's name was one of the names recorded on the paper. Holy Son of Heaven, your subordinate seems to have something rather interesting. Noah said faintly. I didn't expect that the person secretly acting behind Leech Ingyin would instruct Leech Ingyin to steal the 7 Stars Inheritance and block the information about the location of the 7 Stars Inheritance. The person who caused us to be one step behind Leech Ingyin and also caused us to fall into this situation is right beside you. How ironic. But thanks to this, I've saved a lot of trouble. The high-ranking official who signed the paper turned pale and shook his head in a daze. No. No. The surrounding people's gazes toward him were filled with sympathy and pity. The Holy Son of Heaven glanced at Chrysanthemum Tentong, and Chrysanthemum Tentong immediately looked coldly at the high-ranking official. Take him away. Why, no. Your Excellency Tentong. I. 2 guards picked up the high-ranking official who was screaming and mercilessly dragged him out of the conference room. Only then did the Holy Son of Heaven look at Noah with a hesitant expression. President Noah, you don't have to explain anything to me. Noah only looked at the big screen in front of him and didn't even turn his head. I don't want to know what tricks you people in power are playing. But. Noah raised his eyes and looked at Chrysanthemum Tentong. If you want to make a move on fairy tale, then you should first consider whether you have the ability to do so. After saying this, Noah turned around and walked out of the conference room, ignoring the extremely oppressive atmosphere behind him. Chapter 103. Ta, 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 light and slow footsteps echoed clearly in the surroundings. Whoosh. The wind carried bursts of sand and dust as it blew forward. It was like a ghost city. The surrounding residences and buildings were still in their original state, but it was obvious that they were beginning to be abandoned. It was not difficult to see that the people who lived here had abandoned the city and fled to the Tokyo area before they were attacked by the protozoa. Of course, although the buildings were in their original state, they were not complete. Some of the walls were already broken. Some of the building materials were also corroded. Sooner or later, this ghost city would be completely turned into ruins and disappear in the long river of history. In such an environment, Noah, with a cloth bag on his left shoulder, strolled forward as if he was taking a stroll. There was not a trace of emotion in his eyes as he kept looking forward. Not long after, a church appeared in front of Noah. In front of the church's entrance, a man in a wine-red tuxedo, a mask on his face, and a tall hat on his head and a young girl in a dress with 2 kodachi on her waist stood there quietly, as if they had been waiting for a long time. They quietly watched Noah's gradually enlarging figure. Whoosh! Another gust of wind blew through the scene. However, this time, the wind did not carry any sand or dust, but instead brought a strong smell of blood, attracting people's attention to the surroundings. It attracted people's attention to the ground that had been painted red by blood and was full of corpses. Oh, in the interior of the church, in a large iron cage, young girls around the age of 10 were lying inside, overlapping each other. Although their eyes were closed, there were soft moans coming out of their mouths from time to time, proving that they had not lost their lives. Ta, ta, the footsteps that echoed in the surroundings slowly dissipated. Noah had stopped and stood 20 meters away from Leech Ingyin and Leech Benet Jr. He looked at the two former policemen in front of him who killed without batting an eyelid. His expression was as calm as before, but it made people feel scared. This was especially true for Leech Ingyin and Leech Benet Jr., who had already experienced how terrifying Noah was. They clearly knew that they were definitely no match for Noah. Father. Benet Leech Jr. couldn't help but tug at the corner of Leech Shadow Yin's clothes. There was an extremely obvious fear on his young face. Leech Ingyin looked straight at Noah. No one could tell what kind of expression he had under his mask, but he still chose to communicate. I knew you would come, Noah Doria. Then, tell me your choice. Noah's face was as calm as an ancient well, perfectly displaying his ability to control his emotions. Only his deep, dark pupils flashed with a frightening light. Apart from the mastermind, the rest of the people behind you should have all been arrested. Do you still want to continue this boring game? President Noah, don't you understand? Leech Ingyin let out an unpleasant laugh. That's not a problem at all. Even if those people all die, it has nothing to do with me. I'm just doing what I want to do. Otherwise, why would I accept their request? What you want to do is the so-called destruction of the world, right? Noah raised his eyes slightly. What's the point of doing that? I'd like to ask you this question. What's the point of doing this? Leech Ingyin took a step forward, his voice starting to become agitated. I believe that in this year, you have fully seen how ugly humans are. Even if you stop me now and let the Tokyo area survive, they still won't be grateful to you. They will even feel that it's a shame that they are protected by the cursed child shelter. Why do you still want to protect them? The person who doesn't seem to understand is you, Leech Ingyin. Noah closed his eyes for a moment, then suddenly opened them. I don't want to protect the Tokyo area, and I've never had a sense of justice to protect the entire human race. The people of Fairy Tale will only protect one existence, and that is their companions and family. Because my companions and family are in the Tokyo area, that's why I came here. I want to protect them, to protect Fairy Tale. The Tokyo area just happened to become the location of Fairy Tale. Other than that, it has no reason for me to protect it. Noah also took a step forward, his eyes gradually becoming indifferent. Give up, you are no match for me. I won't give up. At this time, Leech Ingyin calmed down. I am a product of the new human creation plan. I was born specifically for the purpose of killing. Only by starting a war will the meaning of my existence be proven. For me, a world of constant war is the world where I should exist. Leech Ingyin spread out his hands and let out an extremely excited voice. Look! A masterpiece that can destroy the world is about to descend. Leech Ingyin's voice had just fallen when Noah's extraordinary sensing ability immediately returned a message, causing Noah to suddenly turn his head and look at the distant seaside. In the next second, the scene that entered Noah's field of vision made Noah begin to doubt his own eyes. What kind of existence is that? This was Noah's first thought. Perhaps it was because of the night, but Noah was unable to clearly see the other party's body color. However, the traces of cracks, the skin full of lumps, and the completely irregular appearance were clearly seen by Noah. Woo 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 woo. A long cry resounded through the night sky of the Tokyo area. The head was abnormally large, and there were countless eyes on its body. Its height was definitely measured in units of hundreds of meters. As it moved its body in the sea, it continuously waved its sickle-shaped tentacles, moving at an extremely slow pace in the direction of the Tokyo area. Awesome! Awesome! Leech Ingyin seemed to want to hug the terrifying monster as he spread his hands in its direction, his voice full of madness. He looked like a fanatic who believed in an evil god. Noah no longer had the time to pay attention to Leech Ingyin. He stared at the huge terrifying creature that was gradually approaching from the other side of the sea and muttered. Stage V Protozoan Scorpio of the Zodiac. War will begin once again. Leech Ingyin looked in Noah's direction and bowed deeply. Please enjoy. After saying that, Leech Ing brought Leech Benet Jr. and leaped up to the top of the church. After a few leaps, they disappeared from Noah's sight. Noah did not pay attention to the departing Leech Ing. To him, Leech Ing was not a threat at all. Therefore, Noah focused his gaze on the terrifying creature called Scorpio. After his eyes flickered a few times, he sighed. Fine, let me tell you whether such a monster has the qualifications to destroy this world. It's over. In the battle headquarters, all of the high officials in the Tokyo area looked at the huge terrifying creature that appeared on the screen. They were all in a daze as if they had lost their minds. Seiji's beautiful face did not change in the slightest, but his hands that were placed on his thighs were tightly clenched together. Sweat had already covered his beautiful slender hands. Could it be that the Tokyo area was really going to end like this? Lord Seiji. On the side, Tentong Ju Cheng was surprisingly calm. Please make the decision to take refuge. Seiji closed his eyes, but his heart was not calm at all. After struggling for a long time, he finally opened his trembling mouth. Just as Seiji was about to give the order, a cry of surprise sounded in the meeting room. What is that? The extremely sudden cry of surprise caused the group of high officials who had almost fallen into the abyss of despair to shift their gazes and look at the big screen. What happened next was believed to be unforgettable for the rest of their lives. Chapter 104. In the process of chasing the Leech Ing, the police took a military helicopter to the unexplored area to search for traces of the Leech Ing. Now, although the Leech Ing has escaped, the police who were ordered to chase the Leech Ing still came to the unexplored area under the guidance of the military helicopter. Rentaro and Yen Zhu were one of the police teams. So that's how it is. Standing next to the military helicopter, Rentaro, who had just come down from the helicopter, heard the news from the other side of the phone and smiled bitterly. In the end, is the Tokyo area really going to be finished? On the side, many police officers seemed to have received the news from their respective police companies. They all held their phones and panicked. It was a mess. There was no way to hide this matter. At least, there was no way to hide it from the police companies that were well informed and existed to deal with protozoa. The body of the Scorpio is bigger than any other species. Who knows how many thousands or tens of thousands of species of DNA were mixed to grow to such a degree. In addition, the roar that could almost resound in every corner of the Tokyo area. Who wouldn't be able to discover such an existence? Even from where Rentaro was standing, he could see the huge shadow gradually approaching from the sea. Therefore, Rentaro also understood how terrifying Stage V was when it reached that level of growth. It was one of the 11 terrifying creatures that almost wiped out the entire human race in the world. In order to match its huge body that was hundreds of meters tall, its body was so hard that ordinary steel couldn't compare to it. Moreover, it wasn't affected by the pyrolite. There were probably no more than 5 weapons in the world that could deal with it. Not to mention, the regeneration ability of the Stage V protozoa was many times more terrifying than ordinary protozoa. The regeneration ability of protozoa was also divided into strong and weak levels. Individuals that could be killed by ordinary pyrolite weapons were defined as regeneration level 1. Most of the protozoa and initiator belonged to this level. Regeneration level 2 meant that they could resist ordinary pyrolite weapons. They needed to be beheaded or burned with fuel to kill them. Regeneration level 3 meant that even if the arm was cut off, it could still be regenerated, or the severed limb could automatically return to the original body, and the cells would respond to each other. Regeneration level 4 allowed one to regenerate even if they lost most of their internal organs. In order to kill such an opponent, one would need to destroy them to the point where not even their limbs were left. Otherwise, this would be another type of undying body. As for whether the regeneration level 5 was real or not, most people probably didn't know. Because at this level, even if the opponent was thrown into extremely low temperature, vacuum, or even magma of thousands of degrees Celsius, as long as the opponent adapted to the environment, it would be able to regenerate, and it would be a molecular level regeneration. With the current scientific level of this world, there was no physical means to kill an opponent of this level. The Scorpio constellation did not have the regeneration ability of a rank 4 or 5, but it still had the means to kill. However, it was impossible for it to only possess a level 1 regeneration ability. Otherwise, it wouldn't have made the insiders in the Tokyo area so desperate. Therefore, the Scorpio constellation had to be at least a level 2 regeneration constellation, and was able to resist the usual Earth weapons. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to survive until now. Standing beside Rentaro, Yenju's eyes flickered with uneasiness, but she still stared at the huge shadow on the surface of the sea. Rentaro, what should we do now? Rentaro didn't answer. It wasn't that he didn't want to answer, but that he didn't know how to answer. However, just because Rentaro didn't answer, it didn't mean that the others wouldn't answer. Isn't that obvious? A hand slowly pressed down on Rentaro's shoulder. Of course we have to deal with it. Rentaro and Yenju were shocked at first, but when they recognized the owner of the voice, they showed different degrees of surprise. President. Yenju threw herself into Noah's arms. Noah. Ryotaro seemed to have found his pillar of support. He breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly called out to Noah. You said we have to deal with it? How do we deal with it? Noah, who had appeared out of nowhere, hugged Yenju, who was running toward him with tears in her eyes. He raised his head and looked at Rentaro with a smile. Then, Rentaro, do you want to save the world together? Save the world. Rentaro tightly clenched his hand. His hand was trembling. But Ryotaro put on a fearless smile. If you have such thoughts, it's not like I can't accompany you for a while. Hearing this, Noah patted Rentaro's shoulder, and his eyes seemed to cross time and space, and he looked at the figure of Scorpio. Virum. The propeller of the military helicopter was frantically moving, supporting the huge body of the helicopter below. Noah stood at the top of the helicopter, in front of the rotating propeller. Braving the howling wind and air pressure, he stared straight ahead, looking at the Scorpio constellation that he could clearly see in its entirety. Rentaro's voice came from the pilot's seat of the helicopter. Is this enough? It's done. Noah closed his eyes and let the bangs in front of his forehead sway wildly with the strong wind blowing against him. Next, it's my job. President. Yenju's excited voice came from the helicopter. Do your best. President, you can definitely defeat Scorpio. Hearing this, Noah didn't respond to Yenju's words. The corner of his mouth slowly rose, opened his eyes, and looked at Scorpio that was wreaking havoc. Woo 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 woo. The frantic roar shook the air, turned into echoes, and spread in all directions. Noah reached out his hand, pulled out his own gun from his waist, and slowly stroked it, as if talking to himself. I didn't expect that I would need your cover so soon. In Noah's body, the magic power that was so vast that it was comparable to the ocean seemed to have been awakened and boiled. Through Noah's arm, it was like a stream of water that had been released from a dam as it violently poured into the spear. If someone took apart Noah's gun and looked at the body of the gun in Noah's hand, then they would find out. On the muzzle of the large caliber revolver, there was a small and precise geometric pattern that was completely inlaid with the muzzle rotating. It was a magic array that was activated by the magical power in Noah's body. Kacha, in the slight sound, Noah raised the gun in his hand, aimed at the huge body of Scorpio, and frantically poured magical power into the body of the gun. Immediately, Noah's eyes turned cold. Shatter, in the light sound, Noah pulled the trigger of the gun in his hand. Bang! This gunshot resounded through the sky. Wang! The magical power in the gun in Noah's hand burst out, and turned into a white beam of light that pierced through the sky, shooting out from the small muzzle, rubbing against the atmosphere, and pushing forward. At this moment, everyone who was looking at the sky could only see a huge white pillar of light cutting through the horizon, cutting through space, like a flashing comet. Amidst the sharp sound of breaking through the air and the vibrations in the atmosphere, it fiercely landed on the body of the Scorpio constellation. Dong! With Scorpio's body as the source, the dazzling strong light soared up, illuminating the entire sky. Woo 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 woo. In the strong light, the body of the Scorpio constellation flashed with a series of flat marks, completely divided into cubes. Bang! With a muffled sound, the Scorpio constellation was like a collapsing mountain, completely shattering into pieces. This scene became a scene that all the witnesses would never forget, including Rentaro and Yen Zhu in the helicopter, including Xing Tianzi in the battle headquarters. Also unforgettable was the figure standing on the helicopter, facing the wind. Chapter 105. The sun shone from the horizon, as if bringing new hope to people, illuminating every corner of the entire Tokyo area. On the balcony of the top floor of the sacred residence, Noah looked down at the scene below where at least 100 high-ranking officials and celebrities gathered and a large group of reporters had been noisily taking photos. His eyes were not affected by the crazily flashing camera flashes, and his dark eyes were still as deep as before. After maintaining this scene for an unknown amount of time, a quiet voice sounded from behind Noah. The celebration ceremony this time is specially held for the hero who defeated the Stage V protozoa and saved the Tokyo area. However, the main character of the ceremony directly skipped the ceremony and hid in this kind of place. Not only is this disrespectful, it will also disappoint many people who hope to see the hero. Saying such a sentence, a beautiful girl wearing a white wedding dress came to Noah's side, and together with him, they looked down at the lively scene below. President Noah, you're probably the only one in the world who would skip the celebratory ceremony hosted by the government and stand up everyone in the Tokyo area. Noah didn't turn his head, as if he had already guessed who came. His eyes were still looking at the lively scene below, and only after a while did he speak. I said, I don't have a strong sense of justice to save the entire Tokyo area. Naturally, I can't be the hero of the Tokyo area, participate in the celebration ceremony, and be worshipped. After saying that, Noah glanced at Xing Tianzi next to him. Besides, there shouldn't be anyone who really worships me. After all, I am the shelter of the cursed child. Do you really not have any reason to defeat the Stage V protogut animals because of the Tokyo area? Xing Tianzi's voice slightly changed, as if it was regretful, as if it was sad. Is the Tokyo area really not worth your protection? Not worth it. Noah didn't care that the person next to him was the supreme ruler of the Tokyo area, and said this sentence without hesitation and without changing his expression. At least, until now, I haven't found a reason to protect it. On the contrary, as Li Qingyin said, there are a lot of reasons to destroy it. But didn't you take the initiative to stand out when its Stage V appeared? Xing Tianzi turned around and finally cast his gaze on Noah. His tone couldn't help but carry some emotions. It was as if he wanted to prove that Noah's words weren't true. I heard it for real in the headquarters. I heard you say that you wanted to save the world. Saving the world is not the same as saving all of humanity. Noah also turned around and looked at Elysium's beautiful face. Or is the Holy Son of Heaven the same as the humans of 10 years ago? Does he think that humans are the overlords of the world? That humans are equal to this world, and that saving this world is equivalent to saving all of humanity? Sage Son of Heaven clenched his hands in front of his chest. He seemed to realize that he was a little agitated, so he forced himself to calm down and put on a serious expression. However, President Noah's power is something that no one knows about. The power of the original body can save all of humanity. Don't flatter me. Noah didn't waver at all and laughed at himself. I said, I'm not that great. But... Sage Son of Heaven seemed to want to say something, but after seeing Noah's calm expression from beginning to end, he reluctantly stopped talking. That day, Sage Son of Heaven and the other high-ranking officials clearly saw from the big screen in the headquarters. They saw the scene where Noah defeated one of the 11 strongest protozoa. That indeed brought an unimaginable shock to all the witnesses. After all, up until now, the existence that could defeat a Stage V protozoa, other than the two strongest initiators in the world who were ranked first and second in the IP rankings, no one else could do it. One could imagine how shocking Noah's actions were. Afterwards, Noah said that the beam of light that defeated Scorpio was created by a rare bullet that he accidentally obtained, and he himself didn't know the result would be like this. This extremely vague statement was used to evade the reason why Scorpio was killed and the phenomenon that all the witnesses saw that day. In this way, Noah became the lucky hero who accidentally obtained an amazing weapon to defeat Scorpio and save the entire Tokyo area. As for what the bullet that could defeat Scorpio was, it became something that everyone wanted to know. Many people began to investigate this matter in an attempt to obtain some clues. Sage Son of Heaven was one of them. However, intuition told Sage Son of Heaven that this matter was definitely not as simple as Noah said. There must be some other inside story. Therefore, Sage Son of Heaven hoped to get some information from Noah. But seeing Noah's unmoved expression, Sage Son of Heaven knew. Noah was prepared to play dumb until the end. This made Sage Son of Heaven even more convinced that the bullet that could kill Scorpio, and the person who controlled the bullet, Noah, must be hiding something. Just as Sage Son of Heaven was thinking about this, Noah, who was still looking at the lively scene below, suddenly opened his mouth. I heard that the people who signed the petition supporting Leech Ingyin to steal 7 stars inheritance were all arrested, right? Yes. Yes. Sage Son of Heaven didn't think that Noah would suddenly bring up this topic, and slightly couldn't react in time. Everyone has been apprehended. Then Noah looked at Sage Son of Heaven as if he could see through Sage Son of Heaven's thoughts. Has the mastermind been caught? Sage Son of Heaven's heart suddenly panicked, and he couldn't help but turn his head, avoiding Noah's gaze. This is our job, President Noah doesn't need to worry about it. Is that so? Noah looked straight at Sage Son of Heaven and smiled for no reason. Do you know? The people who signed the petition are either from a certain faction, or they used to belong to that faction. Sage Son of Heaven's face changed. It seems that I guessed right. Noah smiled, but there was no smile in his eyes. The mastermind this time is Chrysanthemum Tentang's Prime Minister. In fact, if one thought about it carefully, a lot of things could be understood. Not long ago, Sage Son of Heaven stood his ground and prepared to add a new bill in the Tokyo area. Primitive Animals New Law. It was a bill that could give the most basic human rights to the cursed child. And this bill was something that Chrysanthemum Tentang's Prime Minister, who hated the cursed child, absolutely did not want to see. In order to make this bill invalid, Chrysanthemum Tentang's Prime Minister secretly entrusted Leech Ingyin, and let Leech Ingyin take away the legacy of the 7 stars and carry out the Stage V primitive animals summoning. Noah said indifferently. Because once the news that Leech Ingyin were one of the terrorists who tried to destroy the Tokyo area spread to the media, public opinion would no longer support them, and this bill would become invalid. Am I right? Sage Son of Heaven lowered his head, speechless. Why? Noah's tone was still calm, without any emotion. You also suspect that Chrysanthemum Tentang's Prime Minister is the mastermind, right? Why don't you arrest him and bring him to justice? Sage Son of Heaven was silent, until after a long time, he spat out words full of bitterness. Because, without him, I can't support the entire Tokyo area by myself. In one sentence, all the bitterness in Sage Son of Heaven's heart was expressed. Looking at the sorrowful Sage Son of Heaven beside him, Noah thought of the Sage Son of Heaven who always maintained a holy and calm expression in front of the media, and he also became silent. It turned out that the so-called Sage Son of Heaven was not a perfect saint. Sage Son of Heaven was also a girl. A girl who just turned 16, a year and a half younger than Noah. Am I too harsh on this girl? Chapter 106. Tokyo, District 39, Fairy Tale. On the way back to his residence, Noah casually greeted the people who lived in Fairy Tale while walking back to his residence, but his mind had already drifted away. After a year of operation, Fairy Tale was no longer limited to providing schools, residences, hospitals, and training facilities for the cursed child. Some of the promoter and initiator who joined the Fairy's Tale as police officers also lived here. Those who acted as teachers in schools also lived in Fairy Tale. The staff of the hospital and training facilities also lived here, and they were not people who discriminated against the cursed child. Some of them also did some part-time business here. Therefore, Fairy Tale could be considered a small city that could be self-sufficient, even if the scale could not be considered a city at all, only the size of a small town. Walking on the road, Noah suddenly saw the figure of Elysium on the street TV, which made him stop. It seemed to be a video of a news program. On the TV, Elysium's expression was very serious, and she firmly said that in respect of the basic human rights of the cursed child, she would propose a bill again. That was the new law on primitive animals that was now a hot topic in the entire Tokyo area. It was also the root cause of Stage V of the zodiac. This time, Scorpio came to the Tokyo area. To be honest, Noah actually had a good impression of Elysium. Noah, who was very concerned about the cursed child, knew that in fact, the cursed child all over the world did not have a good life. Not to mention foreign countries, even the cursed child, in the 5 regions of their own country was like a rat crossing the street, hated by everyone. Among the 5 regions, the cursed child, in the Tokyo area had the best experience. This was because the Emperor of Tokyo was not a person who discriminated against the cursed children. He even proposed a basic bill of rights for the cursed children. Just like the rumor said, he was as kind as a symbol of peace. Therefore, the children in Tokyo were the ones who lived the best lives of the cursed children. But even so, the cursed child in Tokyo did not have a good life. Noah had heard that in the past, the cursed children would usually be secretly sent to the river as soon as they were born, and their mothers would throw them into the water to drown them before they could even open their eyes. It was just that cruel. Therefore, Noah sincerely hoped that the Holy Sun's new law on primitive animals would pass. But now, it seemed that it would not be easy to achieve. Of course, if the new law on primitive animals was not passed, the fairy's tale would always be the home of the cursed child. Therefore, to Noah, it would be best if the new law on primitive animals could be passed. If not, he would only feel that it was a pity and would not be affected. In the past, Noah thought so. Now, looking at the incomparably holy and serious Holy Sun on TV, who could respond to the media's sharp questions without changing her expression, Noah almost couldn't equate her with the Holy Sun who just showed a cowardly side in the holy house. It's not easy for her. After that, Noah slowly clenched his hand, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Sure enough, if I don't defeat you, the children can't be happy. With that said, Noah's thoughts began to become active. While thinking about all kinds of things, he walked in the direction of his residence. Pushing the door open, Noah walked directly into his residence. People in this country seem to have the habit of shouting, "I'm back," when they entered their own house. But Noah was not from this country, and he was not even from this world. Naturally, he did not have such a habit. Not to mention, Noah lived alone. Even if he had the same habit, he did not know who to tell. However, in the next moment, Noah heard a voice that surprised him. "Welcome back." Noah was stunned. He looked in front and then rolled his eyes. "Mugging, Rentaro, Yenju, why is it you guys again? You don't want to see me?" Yenju puffed up her cheeks and shouted loudly. "I came to see you right after school. Since you're so free, how about you go home and revise your homework when you're free?" Noah sighed. His eyes were half closed as he looked at Mugging and Rentaro. "What about you guys? Why are you guys here?" "Well." Rentaro scratched his head. "We just came to find Yenju. When we saw Yenju come over, we followed her. It's not just us." Mugging smiled and pulled someone out from behind him. "When I was outside your house, I saw this child staring at the door, so I brought her in." Noah was stunned and surprised. Standing in front of Mugging and having his hand on her shoulder, as if he was introducing her, was a little girl who was emitting a cold aura. She did not have much expression on her face and appeared to be unusually calm. "You are?" Noah asked uncertainly when he found the other party's image in his memory. "You're the initiator called Xiaoshi. My name is Qinsho Xiaoshi." The girl called Xiaoshi politely bowed to Noah. Her eyes and face were filled with a sense of intelligence that ordinary children would never have. We've met once before in the Ministry of Defense. The little girl with inexplicable intellectual nature in front of him was the initiator, the partner of the local ruffian named Admiral who was previously taught a lesson by Noah in the Ministry of Defense. I want to thank you. Xiaoshi's calm eyes were fixed on Noah. Thank you for taking me in. Hearing this, Noah more or less understood why Xiaoshi was here. Not long ago, many policemen who went to unexplored areas to chase after Li Qingyin were killed by Li Qingyin. Among them, all of the promoters were mercilessly killed by Li Qingyin, but the initiators were used as hostages by Li Qingyin in an attempt to restrain Noah. Supervisor Jiang and Xiaoshi were a pair of partners in the police team. In other words, the arrogant supervisor Jiang, who wanted to cause trouble for Noah, had already been killed by Li Qingyin. Xiaoshi and the rest of the initiators had become hostages, but they had managed to survive. After that, Noah let these children choose whether to return to the International Initiator Monitoring Organization, ISO, and let the International Initiator Monitoring Organization, ISO, help them find a new promoter or directly join Fairy Tail. In the end, a total of 30 initiators all chose to join Fairy Tail. It seemed that Xiaoshi also chose to join Fairy Tail, which was why she appeared in front of Noah. That's just a small matter, you don't have to take it to heart. Noah stepped forward, squatted down, and looked at the calm little girl in front of him. He reached out his hand and patted her head. How is it? Are you used to living here? Hearing Noah's extremely gentle words and seeing Noah's smiling face, Xiaoshi froze on the spot and did not react. There was only one thought in her mind. He's as gentle as the rumors say. Chapter 107. Seeing that not only did Xiaoshi not reply, but he was also staring at him in a daze, Noah, who had encountered the same situation with the other children more than once, stroked Xiaoshi's head even more gently. His expression also became gentler. What's wrong? No, nothing. Xiaoshi finally reacted. She looked a little unnatural, but she didn't break free from Noah's hand. It's just that I've never been treated like this before, then you'll have to get used to it quickly. Noah gently hugged Xiaoshi's small body and whispered in her ear. Because, here, you'll be able to enjoy all the gentleness that you've lost before. You can't always be so surprised. Xiaoshi was slightly absent-minded. She felt the warmth of Noah's embrace, and she almost became sentimental. Thus, Xiaoshi began to murmur. Then, this really is an incredible place. This time, there was finally some emotion in Xiaoshi's tone, causing Mugging, Rentaro, and Yanzhu to heave a sigh of relief to varying degrees. Previously, Xiaoshi's tone had always been calm, as if she had abandoned all her emotions. Or rather, it could be said that she was emotionless. This kind of calmness that didn't match Xiaoshi's age made it difficult for the others to deal with. As if she could see the relief in Mugging, Ryutaru, and Yanzhu's hearts, Xiaoshi once again returned to her initial calmness. I'm a dolphin-type initiator. My intelligence and memory are both higher than the average promoter and initiator. If I remember correctly, the last time I tested my IQ, it should be 210. 210. Mugging and Yanzhu both widened their eyes. Ryutaru was even more shocked. Then, he spoke with a face full of disappointment. Then isn't that more than twice my IQ? Children's IQ tests are usually more relaxed. Xiaoshi lightly shook her head. As long as you show a certain level of intelligence, the test results will improve quite a bit. It's a bit different from the standards of adults. But that's still very powerful. Noah let go of Xiaoshi and gently pushed her in front of him, sizing her up. So, are you the initiator of the brain faction? The dolphin genes in my body have indeed given me quite a bit of intelligence, and my combat ability is at most at the level of an initiator. Xiaoshi lowered his eyes. It was also because of this that when I fought against Li Qingyin, Mr. Jiang was directly killed. I didn't even last 10 moves before I was captured alive. Losing to a promoter was really embarrassing. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Li Ching-een wasn't a normal promoter to begin with. As a robot soldier created under the new human creation plan, his combat ability is definitely comparable to an excellent initiator. You don't have to worry about this. Noah slowly rubbed Xiaoshi's head. Besides, being a brain faction also has its benefits. There aren't many brain faction members in Fairy Tail. If Xiaoshi can stay, she'll definitely be of great help. I won't leave. When she said this, Xiaoshi's voice showed a hint of emotion for the second time, a hint of anxiousness. I want to stay here. Then stay here. Noah said this without hesitation. Coupled with the warmth of the large hand on her head, Xiaoshi's heart was calm. Then thou is this concubine's junior. Yan Zhu patted Xiaoshi's back as if she was familiar with him and giggled. Don't worry, I'll take care of thee. Xiaoshi suddenly looked at Yan Zhu in disbelief. As far as I know, Miss Yan Zhu is Rentaro-san's partner, and Rentaro-san doesn't seem to have joined Fairy's Tail. Miss Yan Zhu shouldn't be a member of Fairy's Tail, right? This has nothing to do with Mr. Rentaro. Yan Zhu didn't hesitate to say these words, which struck Ryuteru's heart repeatedly and dealt him a heavy blow. Although this concubine is Rentaro's partner, this concubine is still a member of Fairy Tail. This concubine also studied in Fairy Tail, and I have my own home. Oh, by the way, why don't I bring you to this concubine's home to take a look? I have no objections. While Yan Zhu and Xiaoshi were in a heated discussion, Mugeng and Rentaro quietly pulled Noah to the side. What's wrong? Noah crossed his arms and looked at the two people standing in front of him. It seems like you have something you want to talk to me about. Don't tell me you want me to transfer some work to you. We don't need it now, and maybe we won't need it in the future. Mugeng's eyes began to shine with expectation. Although you weren't of much use when Li Ching-een was causing trouble, Riki-kun sent you to Scorpio with a helicopter. Assisting you in defeating Scorpio is considered a contribution, and Riki-kun's IP ranking has risen to 9,900. Soon, you'll have work to do. Hearing this, Noah and Rentaro's mouth twitched. It's not easy for a company with only one IP ranking 9,900 to become famous, right? Can they really get a job like this? Looking at Mugeng's excited and expectant face, Noah didn't want to interrupt her delusions. He could only look at Rentaro. Tell me, why are you looking for me? Actually. Rentaro stole a glance at Mugeng. It's not us looking for you. It's Muri who wants to meet you. Hearing this name, the excitement and expectation in Mugeng's eyes disappeared and was replaced with disdain and gloominess. Sima Muri? Noah asked doubtfully. Why is she looking for me? I don't know. Rentaro hesitated for a moment and said. But, if I didn't guess wrong, Muri, or Sima Heavy Industries, is interested in the bullet you used to kill Scorpio? Noah was relieved. In other words, Sima Muri wants to get information about the bullet from me? It's not just information, right? Mugeng showed a rare look of mockery. With that snake woman's personality, she should want to get the origin of the bullet, the manufacturing method, the manufacturing materials, and even the way to get it from you. If we can mass-produce the bullet that can kill Stage V of the Zodiac, then Sima Heavy Industries will become the world's #1 weapons company. Noah wasn't surprised at all. Noah had long known that once he disguised his crush as the so-called bullet in order to conceal the existence of magic, this kind of after effect would only happen sooner or later. Not to mention Sima Heavy Industries, once the news of Noah possessing a bullet that could kill a Stage V protozoan spread out, then in every corner of the world, those extremely ambitious people would definitely flock to Noah one after another to find him. Noah was already mentally prepared for this. After all, Noah wasn't afraid of being targeted. The reason why he decorated his crush as the bullet was because he didn't want to bring any negative influence to this world without the existence of magic. Noah. At this time, Mugeng put his face in front of Noah. While constantly approaching Noah, he shouted with a face full of excitement. Don't be fooled by that snake woman. Don't let her take away your bullets either. Otherwise, she'll definitely squeeze every last bit of value out of you before kicking you away. Facing such an excited mugging, Noah could only stiffly retreat. In his heart, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What the hell is going on? Chapter 108. Shao Nuaya, with a sweet voice and smile, Muji entered Noah's door and immediately threw herself at Noah. Noah, who opened the door, was so shocked that he couldn't react in time, and was directly held by Muji. The soft touch passed into Noah's nerves, making Noah's heart suddenly jump, and he almost didn't escape. Fortunately, in the past, Lisanna often threw herself at Noah for no reason, just like Muji, holding one of Noah's hands, so that Noah, who was accustomed to this, wouldn't be embarrassed. Suppressing his heart's wavering, he awkwardly struggled to free his arm. "Miss Sima, what are you doing?" "Just call me Muji." Muji's smile was still sweet, tightly holding Noah's arm, not letting him break free. Although I already knew that little Noah is not an ordinary person, but I didn't expect that he could easily defeat the Zodiac Stage V, really worthy of being the man I fancied. The man you fancied?" Noah, who was still trying to break free from Muji, said in a daze. "Isn't the man you fancied Rentaro?" "Well, when I first saw little Noah, I also felt that he would become a big shot, but I also felt this feeling from little Noah, and it's very strong." Muji's eyes shined. "So, little Noah, do you want to come to my side? You can name any conditions you want." "What do you mean by go to your side?" Undoubtedly, his physical ability was above Muji's, but Noah was worried that he would touch something he shouldn't touch, so he didn't use too much strength. As a result, there was no way to break free, and he could only stiffen his body and keep a straight face. "If you want to win me over, please use a better way, okay? You should give up, Noah." Mugging, who had been watching from the side, couldn't help but sneer. Being shameless is this snake woman's special skill, and flirting is her proudest skill. Without these, she wouldn't dare to come see you. These words caused Rentaro, Yanju, and Xiaoshi's jaws to drop slightly. But Muji, who was still clinging on to Noah's arm, seemed to have just noticed Mugging, and said in surprise. "What? So you, the down-and-out young miss who only has the female parts that are particularly prominent, is also here?" This time, even Noah was stunned. How, aren't these two people a little too vicious? "It seems." Xiaoshi looked at Mugging and Muji and said expressionlessly. "These two don't seem to have a good relationship." "Hey, Rentaro." Yanju also lowered her voice and asked. "What's the matter with these two? How should I put it?" Rentaro clutched his head as if he had a headache. The Sima family and the Tendo family have a lot of karma, so Miss Mugging and Muji have known each other for a long time. But whether it's because of the grudges between the two families or because of the ill-fated relationship, these two are true enemies. Once they meet, it will definitely lead to the most terrible outcome. Noah, who heard Rentaro's words clearly, couldn't help but have a headache. He quickly said, "Anyway, don't stand here, go in and sit." Oh. Who knew? Muji actually made a fuss about nothing, and then looked in Mugging's direction with a smile. "Did you hear that, Mugging? Little Noah personally invited me in. Unlike those truly shameless women, you must have come uninvited and barged into little Noah's house without permission, right?" As soon as this sentence was said, everyone present heard a snap sound coming from Mugging's body, as if something had broken. Mugging's smile had become a bit forced. "With my relationship with Noah, this is just a sign of a good relationship. I don't know where this snake woman came from, but what does she know? Good relationship? When can my relationship with you be called good?" When Noah's face was blank, Muji smiled calmly. "I say, Mugging, it's not the first day I know you. Don't tell me I don't understand that you've always treated little Noah as a free meal ticket and wallet?" Who said that?" Mugging's face flushed red. Rather than saying that she was angry, it was better to say that her thoughts were poked. Even her voice had completely changed. My relationship with Noah is the best in the world. Mugen's words made Noah's eyes widen. To be honest, Noah's relationship with Mugen was really not good. At most, they stayed at the level of friends. When Mugen was in financial difficulties, he would give her a little help. His relationship with Mugen was the best in the world? This sentence, not to mention Noah and Muji, even Mugen herself might not believe it. Therefore, Mugen's face turned even redder when he heard this. Of course, it wasn't that everyone didn't believe it. Miss Mugen. Rentaro, who grew up with Mugen, looked like he had suffered a big blow and almost burned to ashes. President. Yen Zhu stomped her feet. Could it be that President was also deceived by Mugen's big breasts like Rentaro? Breasts. Mugen couldn't help but raise her hands to protect her breasts, shouting with a red face. This has nothing to do with breasts at all. Noah and Xiaoshi, on the other hand, reflexively shot their gazes to the chest that was protected by Mugen's arm. Then, they saw that not only was Mugen's pair not covered up, but they were even more exposed, wrapped in a black sailor suit. They are indeed very big. Xiaoshi said this with an extremely objective attitude. From a man's point of view, they are indeed very attractive. It's not impossible for President to fall for Miss Mugen's breasts. Don't believe me. Doubt me. Noah realized that if he didn't say anything, he might really be unable to escape the suspicion of falling for Mugen's breasts for the rest of his life. Mugen and I are just friends, don't make trouble, okay? Oh. Muji exclaimed again and again, raising her eyebrows at Mugen with a victorious expression. Just friends, the Mugen who has the best relationship with little Noah in the world. Mugen's whole body trembled, her tightly clenched fists were already making creaking sounds. In this regard, Muji didn't seem to notice anything. She snuggled up to Noah like a little bird and said coquettishly. Sasa, little Noah, let's not care about Mugen, let's go improve our relationship together. After that, Muji pulled Noah, not knowing if it was intentional or not, towards the direction of Noah's room. Hey! Noah's brain really couldn't keep up, and he hurriedly called out. Wait for me, wait for me. Unfortunately, before Noah could stop Muji, Mugen finally couldn't bear it anymore and pounced forward. She directly hugged Noah's other arm, sticking a pair of huge breasts on Noah's hand, and angrily glared at Muji. You snake woman, don't even think about deceiving Noah. Even if you want to improve your relationship, you should improve it with me. You are just a friend. Friend. Muji forcefully pulled Noah's hand while constantly emphasizing. You friend, hurry up and let go of me. If I'm a friend, then you are a stranger who I've only met twice. Mugen didn't back down and pulled Noah's other hand, playing tug-of-war with Muji. A stranger who only met twice and sticks to me, you should let go of me. You 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 let go of me. Feeling all kinds of soft touches and fragrances coming from both sides of his body, Noah, whose hands were being pulled so hard that it hurt a little, wanted to cry but had no tears. He finally cried out for help. Rentaro. They are your childhood sweethearts and schoolmates, right? Hurry up and think of a way for me. Noah, who was shouting, didn't notice that Rentaro had already knelt on the ground in a daze, and the background was dim. Best relationship, best relationship, best relationship, best relationship. Chapter 109. An extremely oppressive silence pervaded the not-so-spacious hall. Across the table, Mugen, who was sitting on the sofa, crossed his arms unhappily and turned his face to the other side, as if he didn't want to see anything dirty. Most of the depression in the hall came from Mugen. Compared to Mugen, Muri, who was sitting opposite Mugen, had a smile on her face. She seemed to be in a very good mood, drinking tea elegantly while laughing. This was also the reason why Mugen was unhappy and indirectly caused the atmosphere to be oppressive. Ryotaro was sitting diagonally opposite Mugang and Muri, as if he had inexplicably. He recovered from the blow and realized that the second wave of the war could start at any time, so he was very nervous. So, sitting diagonally opposite Ryotaro, Noah, who was sitting diagonally opposite Mugang and Muri, kept sighing and lamenting his bad luck in his heart. Why did such a thing happen to him? Is this the Shura field mentioned in the book? But just like what was said before, Mugang was just an ordinary friend that he had a little contact with. Although Muri was not a stranger, just like what Mugang said, including this time, the two had only met twice. How could the Shura field situation happen in such a situation? So, Noah thought. Just like what Ryotaro said. Mugang and Muri were complete enemies, and if they met together, it would cause a very serious matter. In the end, Noah was just a bystander who was implicated because he happened to encounter this terrible thing. Regarding this point, Xiaoshi, who had an IQ of more than 210, seemed to have guessed it, so he didn't continue to stay and watch the show, and ran away with Yanzhu. If possible, Noah also wanted to learn from Xiaoshi and Yanzhu, and directly run away without a trace. But before that, the things that should be said still need to be said clearly. Muri-san. At that moment, Noah turned his head and looked at Muri, taking the lead to break the silence. Although I can roughly guess the reason why you're here, I still want to hear what you're here for. When it came to the main topic, both Mugang and Rintaro straightened their backs and stopped bickering. Only Emoji still maintained that smiling posture. She held a fan that seemed to be made of iron and tapped it on her cheek. Ma, little Noah, don't be so serious. I didn't come here to talk about such a serious topic. Do you want to talk about something serious? Noah frowned slightly. Then what do you want to talk about? Little Noah, you are a smart person. Don't you know that besides business, the topic of discussion in Sima Heavy Industries can't be anything else? Moji said calmly. Fairy Tale is not only a shelter for the cursed child, but it is also a place to train the initiator and part-time police. Both the initiator and the promoter need weapons, right? Then you guessed wrong. Noah's furrowed brows relaxed and he shrugged his shoulders. Although Fairy Tale does have an organization to train initiators, if it's just training, there's no need to use specially made weapons. Normal practice weapons are enough. As for the police in Fairy Tale, they all have their own weapons because strictly speaking, we're not a police company. Just like the Fairy Tale Magic Guide Guild in Noah's original world, even if the members of the guild were partners in the same organization, the guild would not provide weapons to the members. After all, the guild was different from the companies in this world. The members, employees, would be bound by a contract or salary. If they wanted to work, they only needed to tear off the contract. It was very free. Naturally, if they were free, they wouldn't provide them with weapons or whatnot. Therefore, Moji's statement may be applicable to ordinary police companies, but it doesn't apply to Fairy Tale. Having good weapons is better than not having any, right? Muri's expression did not change. She covered her mouth and smiled, but her eyes were indescribably serious. If Fairy Tale needs any weapons, we can provide all of them to you for free, including those made by humans. For free? Noah, Mugang, and Rentaro's hearts moved at the same time. For free? This sounded like a good deal, but how could there be such a good thing in the world? Don't look at how Noah and Rentaro's guns and ammunition were provided for free by Muri. They thought that Sima Heavy Industries was so rich that they didn't care about wealth. If they really did that, Sima Heavy Industries would have gone bankrupt long ago. The reason why Muri could generously provide free equipment to Noah and Rentaro was because Noah and Rentaro were alone. Even if it was provided for free, it wouldn't cost much. Therefore, if he were to provide free equipment to the entire Fairy Tale, the nature of the situation would be completely different. No one present was a real fool. Naturally, it was impossible for them not to understand this point. Their gaze towards Muri also became thought-provoking. Paying so much, what does Sima Heavy Industries want in return? Noah bluntly asked. Miss Muri, you are also a smart person. I don't believe that you don't know that there are some things that I can't compromise on, right? Noah was, of course, referring to the matter of the bullets. That was Noah's way of saying that to cover up his shattering. If Muri came for it, then Noah could only disappoint her. Well, little Noah, it's not that I don't understand what you want to say, but you should know that a weapon that can defeat a stage V gastronomic animal will attract a lot of attention, right? Muri looked straight at Noah. She didn't hide her curiosity and directly asked. I won't ask you where it came from, how it was made, what it was made of, and what it was produced. I just want to know, little Noah, do you still have that kind of bullet? This time, even Mugeng and Rentaro couldn't hide their curiosity. Like Muri, they looked straight at Noah. Facing everyone's gaze, Noah closed his eyes. After pondering for a while, he gave such an answer. Yes. Mugeng and Rentaro's eyes lit up. Muri also quickly said. How many? How many? Noah opened his eyes and spread out his hands. It's definitely enough to kill all the stage Vs. Kill all the stage Vs? Mugeng and Rentaro were shocked. Kill all the stage Vs. Muri's lips trembled. Then she excitedly shouted. Little Noah. Marry me. PFFF. Noah and Rentaro directly spat. You snake woman, you really did come here with bad intentions. Mugeng stood up and pounced towards Emoji with bared fangs and brandished claws. Do you think I'll let you succeed? Muri was shocked. She was pushed down on the sofa by Mugeng. The two of them twisted together. Finally chose to make a move. Mugeng. Today, I must cut you. You're just a poor girl who ran away from home and can't even eat her fill. Today, I will defeat you in the hands of Sima Lu. Before that, let me use Tendo Ryu to drain your blood. Although they said so, the two daughters of the famous Tiantong school and Sima Lu did not use their outstanding martial arts skills at all. They just fell on the sofa and wrestled, pulling each other's hair. Noya and Rentaro looked at each other and finally let out a long sigh. Chapter 110. The slightly cold air filled the fairy's tail. In the vast training ground, Noah stood in the center with his eyes closed, holding the sheathed knight sword in his hand, quietly waiting in place. Who? A cold wind that made one's skin prickle blue from the surroundings. It swept across Noah's body and caused the hem of his coat to flutter in the wind. Kacha, at a certain moment, such a voice echoed around the training ground. Kacha kacha. As if it had caused a chain reaction, the same sound not only became louder and louder from the surroundings, but it also became more frequent. Taking a closer look, it was the sound of machine guns suddenly popping up from the ground around the training ground, setting up and aiming in front. At least 30 machine guns were set up on the ground, surrounding the entire training ground. All of them were aimed at the center of the training ground, where Noah was. Da-da-da-da. At the next moment, the continuous sounds of machine gun fire turned into a cacophony of noise from all directions. In the midst of this chaotic sound, there was a very subtle sound that suddenly sounded. That was the sound of Noah's hand on the hilt of the knight's sword in his hand. Clang! Immediately after, dazzling sword gleams accompanied by a sword hum flashed around Noah, who was surrounded by machine gun bullets from all over his body. Dang 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 dang. Then, the dazzling sword lights collided with the bullets that were coming at them with menacing force. Ding 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 ding. The sound of bullets frequently falling to the ground also sounded. Moreover, those bullets that fell to the ground were all split in half, with extremely smooth cut marks on the fracture. Just like this, gunshots, sword sounds, crisp collision sounds, and the sound of bullets falling all mixed together, constantly reverberating back and forth in the training ground. Until the machine guns ran out of bullets, all kinds of sounds finally stopped. Whoo! Another gust of wind blew by, carrying away the smell of gunpowder and smoke that pervaded the training ground. Whoo! In the middle of the scattered bullets that were completely cut in half, Noah slowly exhaled. The knight's sword in his hand had already returned to the scabbard. It was only then that Noah opened his eyes and looked around. Looking at the ground that was completely cut in half and scattered with bullets, he nodded. 1 hour of sword training, complete. Fairy Tale was officially on the right track. The situations that required Noah to personally appear were a lot less, leaving Noah with a lot of free time. Without the slightest neglect, Noah naturally used his leisure time to train. The most important thing was the training of magic and sword skills. In terms of combat skills, Noah was already proficient enough, and even in the year that he lived in this world, he had absorbed the world's fighting, boxing, aikido, judo, kendo, martial arts, spear skills, and other aspects of the world. He had even absorbed the military combat skills, so there was no need for him to specially train. Because his physical ability was strengthened by the protozoan virus every month, there was no need for Noah to spend time specially training. Moreover, the current Noah's physical ability was definitely not worse than the cursed child, so using the method of training to strengthen his physical ability was not very effective. In fact, Noah found that the strengthening of the protozoan virus had gradually begun to lose its effect. This proved that Noah's physical ability had been strengthened to a shocking extent, and even the protozoan virus that could transform any creature into a monster could no longer be strengthened, reaching its limit. Therefore, now, Noah basically only maintained training in sword skills and magic. The training in other aspects had already reached its limit, and there was no need to continue. Compared to other aspects, magic was endless. As long as Noah continued to train his magic, not only could he become more familiar with the use of magic, but he could also improve the level of magic, and increase his strength in all aspects. As for sword skills, that was the skill that Noah was most familiar with. By training his sword skills, Noah could keep his body in the best condition, and not let his combat skills, physical ability, and other aspects deteriorate because of lack of training. In other words, now, Noah trained his magic to improve his strength, and trained his sword skills to maintain his best condition and not let himself deteriorate. This was the so-called, go from complicated to simple. In the future, Noah only needed to train in magic and sword skills. In other aspects, it was enough to not deteriorate through training his sword skills. After all, without special circumstances, such as being strengthened by something like the protozoan virus, it would be difficult for Noah's other abilities to improve greatly. Then, next up is an hour of magic training. Talking to himself, Noah had just put the knight's sword into his usual cloth bag when his phone rang. Noah frowned. In this period of time, whenever Noah's phone rang, it was most likely not a good thing. Because of the bullet that killed the Scorpio, a lot of trouble began to follow one after another. For example, there were ambitious people from other regions who wanted to obtain the bullet from Noah, attempting to use it for their own hegemony. For example, there were people with ulterior motives who wanted to obtain the bullet from Noah, using it as a deterrent to strengthen their own position. There were also people who wanted to use the bullet for revenge, business, trade, and so on. Thus, one after another, they found trouble with Noah, making Noah very annoyed. I really hope they don't come for the bullet again. Even if they do, please let these people use assassination and kidnapping methods, letting me deal with them quickly. Saying such a sentence, Noah picked up the phone. Hello, I'm Noah. On the other side of the phone, a familiar sweet voice immediately sounded. Ah, little Noah, this time the phone call is a bit slow. Hearing this voice, Noah suddenly lost his strength and listlessly responded. What, so it's Moj, don't be so cold, little Noah. Moj let out a voice that sounded like she was about to cry. Do you hate me that much? I don't hate you, but I definitely don't welcome you. Noah rolled his eyes. Say it, what do you want from me? Little Noah, you're really boring. Moj's voice once again returned to its sweet state. Obviously, it was just an act. The thing you asked me to do last time, I've already done it. Noah's spirit was shaken, and his eyes glowed with vigor. Last time, in order to obtain some information about the bullet, Moj took the initiative to come to him. As a result, it turned into a big fight with Mugung, and it ended in a farce. However, afterwards, Noah asked Emoji to help him do something. So, Noah's mouth slightly hooked up. You've collected it all? Only a part. Emoji chuckled. But, it should be enough to make little Noah satisfied. Good. Noah nodded heavily. I owe you a favor. I don't want little Noah to be so clear with me. Emoji laughed with deep meaning. Of course, if little Noah wants to return the favor, then take little Noah's own secret in exchange. Let's talk about it later. Noah perfunctorily replied such a sentence. Then, where is it? I gave it to Kanori at school. Emoji's voice became sly. So, little Noah, you go and see Kanori. After that, Emoji left a series of laughter and hung up the phone. Rentaro? That thing is not suitable for him to know, right? Noah had a headache. This Emoji is definitely intentional. Chapter 111. Dee Dash. The sound of car horns kept ringing, and it clearly drilled into Noah's ears. For Noah, this kind of sound has already become a common occurrence in the past year, and he could hear it every day. However, even so, Noah still felt uncomfortable with this kind of noise in this world. Compared to these sharp noises, the noisy and noisy sounds in the past, fairy tale, were like the sounds of nature. At least, it was so for Noah. While his mind was thinking about this, Noah raised his head, looked up, and looked at the building in front of him. It was a building called Happy Building. The signs hanging outside the building starting from the first floor were Sperjbiet, Matchery, Tiantong Civilian Police Company, and Light Wind Financial. In this year, Noah has already learned from a lot of books. With his extraordinary understanding and memory, he successfully mastered almost all the languages in this world. Therefore, Noah could easily distinguish that Sperjbiet was German, meaning forbidden area, and Matchery was French, meaning my lover. Tiantong Civilian Police Company was completely Chinese, and he believed that anyone could know what this place was from the sign. As for Light Wind Financial, at first glance, it seemed to be a financial company, but Noah, who was not unfamiliar with Mugino and Rentaro, knew that this was just a place for loan sharks. The first and second floors, if Noah remembered correctly, seemed to be a gay bar and a nightclub. It's really a place that makes people speechless. Leaving this sentence, Noah didn't know whether it was a comment or a complaint, and walked into the building. It was early in the morning, and it was only about 2 hours before dawn. The Sperjbiet, on the first floor, was a bar across the street. It seemed that it was not open yet, so the lights were not turned on, and there was no smell of people. The Matchery on the second floor was a type of shop, and it was much more obvious than the bar on the first floor. The shop was filled with pink wallpaper and glass balls that even romantic people would feel nauseous. It was also not open yet, so there was no smell of people. Therefore, Noah deliberately lowered his footsteps, walked up to the third floor, and gently pushed open the simple door with the sign, Tiantong Civilian Police Company. Entering someone's territory without knocking was undoubtedly a very rude thing to do. This kind of common sense, in Noah's original world, was something that everyone knew. Noah was not as careless as Naz and Gray. When entering someone's house, he would definitely knock first. However, perhaps it was because Noah wanted to take revenge on Mugung and Rentaro for coming uninvited in the past, but this time, he did not knock on the door. He directly pushed the door open and entered. Therefore, what happened next was a rare experience in Noah's legendary life where he regretted his actions. The moment Noah opened the door, inside, a voice full of doubt and confusion let out a bewildered sound, and turned around to meet Noah's eyes. Then, the owner of the voice, whether it was his expression or his body, was completely frozen. At this time, Noah already suspected that what he saw was not real. He rubbed his eyes, and when he confirmed that everything in front of him was real, his expression gradually froze. What appeared in front of Noah was an ordinary yet extraordinary scene. Ordinary referred to the layout of the door. A few cheap desks and chairs, surrounded by a few bookshelves and screens, made up the small office in front of him. What was extraordinary was not the scene in the office, but the scene where the owner of the office was currently working. Even standing in Noah's position, he could clearly see it. The owner of the office in front of him was standing in front of a desk in the innermost part of the office. A black sailor suit was casually thrown on the desk. That was the clothes that the owner of the office usually wore. The owner of the office who threw the clothes on the desk stood there stiffly. The expression on his face was the kind of shock and disbelief that had happened because of something unexpected. Because of this, the owner of the office did not react for a while. Facing Noah's body, it was the kind of white that made people squint their eyes involuntarily. To put it simply, that body was completely naked. Therefore, Noah completely saw the delicate body that was sexy, full, white, charming, and infinitely tempting. His gaze also looked at the other party's curvaceous body. An indescribable silence fell in this small office. Noah and Mugging looked at each other from a distance. Their expressions were also stiff, and their eyes were also full of disbelief. This lasted for nearly a minute, and no one reacted from this state. It was not until a minute later that Mugging maintained the state of facing Noah. There was no cover on her body at all, and her beauty was completely displayed. Her face quickly turned red at a speed visible to the naked eye, and it was the kind of extreme red, and her mouth slowly opened. Noah, who witnessed all of this, finally reacted. At the same time, he also expected the screams that would resound throughout the building. With the grief and indignation of being surrounded at any time and being accused of a crime that would be difficult to wash away for the rest of his life, he stepped back step by step. Just when Mugging was about to scream and Noah was about to close the door to block this beautiful scene in front of him, such a voice came from the stairs next to him. Seriously, that Yen Zhu is clearly my partner, but she stays in fairy tale all day. She's not willing to come out even when I call her. She said something about waiting until she has a job. Can't she come here for a while if she doesn't have a job? The familiar voice caused Noah, who was retreating, to stumble and almost fall. Mugging's face was flushed red, and the scream that was about to ring out was stopped in its tracks. If Rintaro saw this scene, not to mention what kind of misunderstanding it would cause, Mugging's seductive mature body would welcome the appreciation of the second man in her life. Under such circumstances, even Noah, who usually had the best control of his emotions, couldn't help but subconsciously began to look for an escape route. On the contrary, Mugging rushed in front of Noah. When Noah's eyes widened because of the beautiful body that was constantly enlarging in front of his eyes, she grabbed Noah's hand, dragged him into the office, and slammed the door. "I'm back." With this voice, Rintaro lazily pushed open the door of the Tentong Civil Guard Company office and walked in. "Mugging-san?" Rintaro glanced around and didn't find anyone, so he couldn't help but scratch his hair. "Not here? It's strange that you're not in the office at this time." After saying that, Rintaro complained as he walked towards the water dispenser. "Yen Zhu, who can't stay idle, isn't here. Mugging-san, who needs to work the most, isn't here, but I, who is usually the laziest guy, came to the office. What kind of strange day is today?" Rintaro said this sentence, filled his cup with water, took a sip, and sighed. "Should I suggest Mugging-san to prepare tea? After all, this is a company, right? They have to entertain guests, right?" Rintaro muttered to himself and walked in the direction of the water dispenser. Rintaro didn't notice at all. Outside the door, there were two extremely weak breathing. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.